Like, you're introducing the very things that ruined public schools, apart from all of the shit of like companies like this, like Psychus, making sure that you teach your second graders, I'm sorry, your third through fifth graders about puberty blockers and hormones and
I was told that
gender
doesn't exist, Scott.
non-binary ideology.
Corey
The
should
whole
go.
point
He's
is to
had his
put this
hand
in
up
your
for a
schools.
while.
So Scott,
Oh no, it's just frozen like this.
So let's go on to our next topic. With the ongoing backlash against the American history of racism in public schools, vouchers have found fresh political popularity. There is an attempt by conservative politicians and donors to offer school choice, where private schools are the alternative. But whether you agree with the public school backlash or not, do you think that offering this sort of choice is beneficial? Is this a detriment to our democracy? Schools are teaching wildly different curriculum, such as those that are guided by biblical values? Or is this the sign of a healthy society where you can choose a highly curated version of education? So this is apparently blowing up in Texas specifically, which is what inspired this conversation. But this has been raging for a long time, and it looks like people are making great headway. So I want to see like what your thoughts are on voucher system. We'll start with our man Wick.
Yeah, so vouchers have a lot of good about them, like being able to escape a failing school system and send your children to somewhere better, and choose to put your money that should be going to your child, right, to a place that is more successful and has more chance for your child to succeed. Sounds like a great thing on the surface, right? But there are issues with school vouchers that give me pause and should give everyone here pause. There is a value in making the rich people and the poor people have to go to the same place to have the school, because it will raise the standards, or not the standards, but um, the quality. That's it. Raise the quality of education for those who have the have-nots, if you will. If you simply allow people who have more resources and more means to be sent to send their kids off and abandon the local communities that they are should be a part of, this has detrimental effects. So it's a hotly contested subject because both sides have merit here. There are concerns on both sides. I tend to err on the side of being against school vouchers, simply because I think that there is merit in making the rich and the poor be educated together. Now, that's not to say that there will never come a voucher system that comes into place that addresses my concerns. That's absolutely possible. I'm just not currently aware of it, but I'm not aware of a lot of voucher systems. So there it is. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Hey, let's go, Scott.
So, school choice has been a really big thing in the liberty movement. People love the idea of money following the student and being able to pick between what school's doing well and offering a more market-based solution. Unfortunately, I think school choice is probably one of the most pernicious and evil things that we could ever have occur within America, within America right now. And I think Corey DeAngelis is probably one of the worst snakes in America. The reason is we're told, oh, we're going to get to go to different schools. It'll be a market-based solution. Better schools will perform. It'll create good incentive structures. That's not why school choice is existing. That's not what's occurring. What's occurring is making sure that we can destroy the idea of private schools, and we can destroy homeschooling, and we can destroy Montessori schools slowly, and we can put them under whatever political metrics that we want. It just so happens to be Corey DeAngelis, who's the face of school choice, also just happens to be on the Inclusion Policy Lab board of UNESCO. That's the United Nations Education, Science, Culture Organization. And he's also on the E team, Education and Digital Skills team for UNESCO, which specifically they talk all the time about regulating public-private partnerships, and that school choice, they've written studies on how school choice is a means of forcing diversity, equity, inclusion, critical theory, social emotional learning, transformative social emotional learning, things like Psychus standards and the National Sex Education Standards, Psychus being sex education for social change. all of these we can use school choice. You go, well, how does that work? Well, see, as of right now, private schools, it's really difficult to regulate them because they don't really get that much public funding, if any at all. But once school choice is instituted, the money follows the child, which means private school is being subsidized by the state. And all of a sudden, teachers' unions have a say in how that money is used. And the government has a say. And you, the tax-paying person, you have a say on the regulations and rules that we need to put in place because they're getting state funding. Second step is another great example of trying to make sure that it's already 34% of all of our children, 16.5 million per year in elementary school, are in second step programs, social emotional learning, which is essentially programs that are designed to target your children, find out who lack empathy, and ensure that they believe in things like critical theory, critical democracy. They write this in their own literature, and it's highly cited literature. Not only do they do that, but they give your children tests on computers to target specific children that have problematic views. And then they use things like the fear zone, having teachers act as counselors that are not trained to do so, so that they can target your children, target them for their identity status, shame them for it, and then bring them into woke culture or critical consciousness. No, I am against I am against school choice because it is absolutely a system that is set up by large corporations and large NGOs and multinational globalists, if you will, companies and businesses and governmental organizations as a means of destroying your right to a private education and destroying your right to be able to have unregulated or lowly regulated homeschool. So I think it's one of the most evil things you can do, and libertarians and conservatives have fallen for the grift. Don't trust the Koch brothers in summation.
Corey.
Let me just collect myself for a moment. I need to. So I sort of echo a lot of the same sentiments that Wick laid out earlier. Of like, I'm not entirely sure. So I fully recognize, at least based off what I know. Well, I would say the same things about Canadian education, about what I know about United States education. Like, there are very real fundamental problems in our public education system. But I don't know that the answer is vouchers, since I'm generally not in favor of private education. And I've had this conversation with Eucharist in person. Shout out to Eucharist. Amazing. Where it's like, I sort of expressed the concern of like, pretty much, I don't know that I want, I'm against choice in this context. I don't know if I want, let's say, parents having the right to like not teach their children, as a scientist, like basic science. I don't want them to have to, I want to give them the ability to like avoid being taught like evolution or like other basic literacy skills. But Eucharist told me that doesn't appear, let's say, that concern is overblown, doesn't seem to happen as much as I thought it might. But then like this article comes along and it seems like there's like a concerted effort to like allow or to, as under the guise of giving more choice, pretty much like giving parents the ability to avoid not having their children taught, I think, certain fundamentals. And so basically, as of right now, I'm open to being moved, but right now I'm not for vouchers, sort of like what Wick echoed earlier.
I could.
So there's some disagreement here. I believe school choice is a good policy, and I think that the left-wing opposition to it makes no sense at all. I think it injects market economics into education. It allows parents to choose the best schools, and that inherently leads to bad schools having difficulty keeping students and ultimately failing, the creative destruction of the market put into an education environment. I think if private schools met base standards, it doesn't make any sense why parents can't choose to send their children to good schools that are better fits. Private schools, on average, cost less per student, and students at private schools do better. I know one of the criticisms of this is, well, they tend to be wealthier, but even voucher students tend to perform comparably to public school students, yet on average still cost considerably less, and that's tax dollars. Private education can still be can be a better deal, and in addition allows smaller class sizes and more curriculum curation. I think more importantly, it allows parents to keep their children safe from CRT propaganda. Children being exposed to propaganda is an important issue, They are impressionable and should not be indoctrinated into political beliefs by teachers who may hold political agendas. I get, Scott, I get your concern with tying the money to leftist nonsense, as we're seeing in the public education field. But private education still exists despite the leftist nonsense existing in the public education field. Intuitively, if private schools become left-wing hellholes like the current public school system, then there would be some private schools who would compete with them in the same way that current private schools do. I think keeping, and I agree that the concern here is that, we have to keep our children safe from propaganda. I think that matters. And I want, this is like somewhat personal as well. My experience being taught about certain things in high school were incredibly different than they were taught in college. I was given very different understandings about the Native American tribes, what they did, so in my high school experience, it was the whites that were evil. The natives were all peaceful, pipe smoking hippies who got slaughtered. And, my understandings of the world were shaped by that for a very long time. After going into college, I understand that, I began learning about the incredible slavery and brutality that was perpetrated by a lot of Native American cultures that simply wasn't included in the high school curriculum. I think the CRT movement is problematic. We can talk about that more. I think that is being pushed in public education. I think it's a real problem.
Thank you so much, oh boy. Amanda, please.
How do you even come after that, right? But I would have to say to the whole situation, it works differently in Canada, and I can speak from personal experience, having gone through the religious school system here, the public Catholic school system. The religious education is very different than a public school education, and I have a lot of personal beliefs on this. And I do think that, especially in the case when it comes to a lot of the morality issues and like these kind of conversations about ethics. Look, if you want to put your kid in a religious school, be my guest, but like don't take public dollars for it, because I know what you're gonna say. So before you say it, I know United States Christian society, we love our Jesus, big guy, I get it, but there are, I hate to break it to you, a couple other religions that are quite big that also could benefit from a public school system of some sort, and there's never ever this like similar value put there. So I kind of go, okay, cool, like we just want to have the Christians have a school again, cool. Having been through it, it's really neat. I got like best sex education I could have ever asked for. I had so much knowledge going into my early 20s. So I do agree that like there's a difference between a university education and a high school education, but I think that's there for a specific reason. Not everybody always goes through the full system after high school, so there's a lot of different areas of employment and other things that people are going to get funneled into. I think once you get to the post-secondary levels, you're going to start to have those more nuanced conversations, be it this indigenous statement or something that counters that. So I think just in general, when I looked into it, like it looks like the people who really were funding it was a political action committee. And if I can, we can perhaps talk about this as well, but I don't really personally agree to political action committees and the idea of what they do to public institutions, because speaking as a Canadian, cannot relate. That is not a thing here to the same degree. So I think it's a little bit interesting once you start getting that, private money into public. And I don't know, that's a little sus to me.
How much, Brodicus?
Yeah, school choice should be allowed. And so my argumentation for this is that if you do not want to go to your school district because your school district is failing, then you should be able to find another school district, whether it be private or public or otherwise. And so with that being pushed forward, I think that you would be able to move kids towards more successful school districts that are able to, especially when talking about public, right? You could move your kids to, or not even necessarily move, you could send your kids to more successful school districts that have proven to be far more efficient when it comes to kids, and far more prosperous when it comes to kids. And this is done without a huge financial liability on the parent. When it comes to private schools, there are still state mandates that the school must teach this, the school must teach this, and the school must teach this. There are mandates as to what the school must teach. And typically what you see in private schools, talk about like private Christian schools or private Catholic schools or something like that, you see like extracurricular classes, such as when you're talking about for private Catholic schools. I never went to one, but from what I've heard is that they require mass. And so that would be something that I would consider like as the extracurricular as like to the public school, but the state mandates would still be in effect as to what the school must teach for that kid to be considered educated. And so therefore I think that school choice is beneficial to the parents, it's beneficial to kids, and it's beneficial to people who are stuck in school districts that I'm got to admit are failing. They're failing the kids. They're not giving the kids the proper education. They're not giving the kids what they need to succeed as they move out of these school districts. And unfortunately, that falls upon the kids later on in life. And so I 100% support school of choice. If the school district you're in is failing, I 100% support your option to move your kid to a different school district, to have them be more prosperous and to set them up for success early in life.
Razor.
When it comes to the idea of the vouchers and school choice, I myself have a understanding. I myself have an understanding that obviously people want to have. Let me reset. I apologize. That came out way wrong. So I heard a lot of things that kind of made me mad. So the reason for wanting these private schools want to move to a completely different school, something that you find to be better, is because the schools that are bad because they're underfunded. They don't have the right amount of equipment and stuff. Things are run down because they're not getting any kind of money in. Because if I'm remembering correctly, someone feel free to correct me if I'm not remembering this right. Schools are funded by property tax. So if you're in a bad part of town with low property taxes, like the houses are shit and everything, no one has any money, the schools are not going to be funded well enough to teach them. So then, yes, school choice should be somewhat fine. It's like, hey, I want to take my kid from this shitty ass school and move him to this better school over here, which makes sense. But then you end up ruining that community, because then the pipeline to make that community better by giving them an education, which can then create better jobs, which can then make better housing, which then better schooling. The cycle can go if we just funded the public schools, not through the property taxes, instead of just saying, here, take money and go to whatever private school you want to go to. I'm not against it, vouchers, but I don't like the idea of that being the only option versus just funding the fucking schools.
Increased funding, yeah.
Thank you.
Please.
Also, reworking how they're funded, because obvious you can't do it through property tax, or else you do have that constant cycle.
I actually agree with Lactate on this. I think that I think what it's interesting that in the topic, right, there's the idea of like people being given alternate views of history or something, right? Like alternate forms of education, maybe like very like heavily Christian or heavily patriotic or whatever you want to call it, right? But I think the reason people are looking for things like school vouchers in some cases, aside from failing public schools that they want to get the kids out of, some people feel like their children are being indoctrinated right now into an alternate version of history pushed forward by woke weirdos, right? That teaches their kids that they're racist, pushes like gendered ideology, pushes things like CRT or the 1619 Project or whatever the fuck it is, right? So a lot of people want to get their kids away from that shit. And I think it's interesting that you said that, hey, this is the version of history we've decided to teach, right? And people trying to pull their children away from this version of history, this woke version of history, is the problem. I think it makes sense they do this, and I think it makes sense to let them do it. But to add on to Lacto's like ending point that some of you guys like seem to like bristle about for some reason, it is true that many Native American tribes had slavery before the Europeans ever showed up. Right after the Europeans showed up, they had more. They took on African slaves. In the Trail of Tears, they had thousands of African slaves with them that they took with them. Some of them practiced cannibalism, right? This horrible torture, human sacrifice of these tribes were not like tree hugging like forest hippies, right? And this like image of them that gets pushed around as if they're friendly druids that smoke peace pipes is fucking ridiculous. It's actually kind of racist.
Okay, open to the panel.
No, dog.
Wow.
Hold on,
They believe in the colors of the wind.
Look,
Okay,
there's,
I have
there's a
some-
lot
yeah,
here.
Okay, no, hold on.
I
I
love
real
that
fast.
movie.
I didn't address it in my little opening there because I find it stupid. But always talking about this bull of you're teaching the kids CRT and the woke agenda. It's so
Is that wrong?
Yes,
I think
they're
yeah.
teaching actual history. They're teaching them how things work. You, in
It's
order
in
to
the
live in this
1619
society,
project, which has been
Crazy.
introduced into the curriculum of some public schools in the United States. That's actual history? Or is
But
it,
you're-
or is it
society
or
in the
is it
society
history?
we
You're-
live in the society that we live in, we have to be able to know our past, no matter how bad it is. And if anything, the whole CRT thing, that's a collegiate thing. So stop talking about it.
No, you don't know
it's
the-
like they're being
Okay,
great
God
children.
damn
You're
it.
saying that
No,
just
no,
because
no,
you
no,
have
no,
Ignore
no,
this
no,
for
no,
a second.
no, no, no,
Ignore this for a
no,
second.
real quick.
Can we not do
Real-
CRT?
real
then?
sure
If
it's gonna
it's
be
not
really
in the
quick.
schools, if it's not in the schools, then riddle me this: why is it that an event was recently held with Kimberly Crenshaw, Ibram X. Kendi, and Sumi Cho, three highly cited individuals in critical legal studies and critical race theory, all say yes, it's in the schools, and we need more of it.
You're pointing
Stop
to
fucking lying.
So what's happening here is
And parents can see
people on
through
all
it.
sides, right?
No.
People on all sides here are pointing to individual apples and saying that's the apple cart, when that's
See,
not true.
thank you.
We have huge amounts of thousands and thousands and thousands of schools across America, which vary wildly in what they teach in curriculum. One of the great things about our school system is that we can have influence on what our local schools teach by going to our local boards
mean
of
thousands?
You can't in
education,
Florida.
advocating for different.
Not anywhere else, but you can in Florida. Yeah.
You can do this all across the country.
What do you
right?
mean
They do
thousands of
tech-
different schools that
public
have
schools
different?
I
Wait,
went
wait,
to
wait,
have
wait,
that.
wait, 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 wait. What do you mean thousands of different schools that have thousands of different curriculums? There's 50
There's a-
different curriculums that
How
are
many
by
high school-
state.
like,
If you
when
so
you were in
that- wait,
elementary
wait,
and high
wait,
school,
one
how
second,
many
one
schools did you
second.
go
I'm
to?
going to describe this. 1 second. There are 50 different there are 50 different curriculums that school districts fall underneath. They fall underneath the state curriculum for the education of that state. In private schools fall underneath that same curriculum. Public schools fall underneath that same curriculum. This is the curriculum that is statewide. So there are 50 different curriculums that
So
are
Spartacus-
followed countrywide, not thousands of different curriculums.
Okay,
So
but
Spartacus, hold
within
on,
that
Spartacus, hold on,
curriculum, local municipalities, local school districts
Yeah.
have a lot of freedom in how to
They do.
exercise this, right?
Yeah.
They just
Mhm.
do. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's- yeah.
look, take
They
it from
free-
someone who actually went to over a dozen different elementary, middle school, and well, not a dozen. It's probably like 8. I'd have to look. I'd have to think about that.
I went
But
to
anyway,
6 different
quite a
schools,
few
unfortunately.
because I was in a military home and I moved around a lot, right? So I went to quite a few different, not just in America, but internationally as well. The difference in how they taught even basic stuff like math, even back in the 90s and the 80s, varied
Okay.
wildly from location
It's
to
in the
location.
schools. Stop.
It's
Right?
because
you're just trying to say, you're trying to muddy the waters.
I'm not
It's
trying to
because-
muddy.
Nobody
Saying
would
it's
say
in the
it's every
schools,
school
saying
in
it's in the
America.
schools as if
Okay,
it's
that's
a
such a
systemic
vague. That's such a
issue.
I
vague
said-
Well,
sentence.
I
it's
said
because
second step.
the
I
federal
said
curriculum.
Second step is in 34% of schools, 16.5 million. That's what they claim.
Here,
These are individuals that teach transformative social emotional learning. I don't need you to fucking muddy the waters with your bullshit of it's not in schools when the academics say it and the programs say it.
Okay,
and
hold
we
on.
cite this.
34%
Hold
of
on,
no,
schools
no,
are
no,
actually-
hold on,
you're
the federal
dishonestly
curriculum-
acting
I have
as
federal
a
curriculum.
condemnation,
God,
my friend.
I have
You
to
are-
ask.
you
So
are
the federal-
extrapolating that to just real quick.
So
Razor,
the
let
federal-
me handle this, and then I'll let you go. But
Third of
they
the nation.
extrapolate this. Even the statistic, even if we believe the statistics you're giving us right now and saying 34%,
It's their
that is
claim.
a far cry. That is a far cry from even a majority of schools. And you can say, look, I'm all for
Pushing
private
I
further,
don't want a
they're
schools.
third of us to
expanding
grow
them.
up to be commies, you fucking weirdo.
Well, I don't want
Like,
any of us to
what
grow
is-
up to be ANCAPs, but you know what? I don't get that decision. Like, our society
fair.
has a vested interest in
That's
teaching
ridiculous.
minimum
ANCAPs
fucking
won't put you
standards.
against the
So
wall.
wait,
Minimum
so
fucking
wait,
standards.
wait,
And to
wait,
advocate
okay.
for
Wick,
ignorance,
Wick,
take away
Wick,
education and power
Wick,
from the people
Wick,
is just fucking some nonsense.
Wick.
brother.
Okay.
Wick.
Well,
The
they got
federal
nothing
cu-
to back up this
the
shit.
federal curriculum is the loosest curriculum we have. Then the state curriculum, then it narrows it down state by state to what the exact state curriculum is going to be. Then, if you want to go further, it goes down to the school district, and the school district can play within what the state curriculum has provided.
Yes.
But the state curriculum is what provides the diplomas. The state curriculum is what provides the GEDs. The state curriculum is what provides the graduation. The districts that can't decide that you can only graduate if you do this. That's not something a district can decide because the graduation is decided by the state. So
Okay, I have
there's
that-
50
okay,
different there's 50 different graduation curriculums, correct?
Once again,
Not thousands.
Okay, hold on. So
But
wait,
you're
wait,
acting
That was
as
such
if
a
that's-
dumb
wait,
point.
before you
it
answer,
is.
wait,
Like,
before you answer, hold on.
what's even your point here? Because
Wait,
we can
before you
even look
answer.
within state, just real quick, within a different state, within a local state, you have schools that do well, who have well-taught
Yes.
curriculums, and you have schools that do poorly and piss poorly
Because
and teach
there are
poor
because there are
curriculums.
schools because
Because
believe
they
it or
have
not,
a lot of
believe it
freedom
or
in
not,
how they teach
believe
that minimum
believe it
state
believe it or not,
standard.
believe it or not, schools can absolutely fail, just like businesses can fail. Just because two businesses do the same exact thing does not mean that one business is going. That does not mean that both businesses are going to get the same exact amount. So these schools, these schools.
It's not good if the schools fail.
I'm
Let's.
sorry.
It's not good if the schools fail. Like the school is an
Thank you,
institution.
Amanda.
No,
it's a
it is.
public
No, wait. I'm gonna counter that. I'm
Okay.
gonna counter.
Yeah, we got. Cause I want you to
I-
counter quickly. Then I want to get to Razor, who's been waiting. Then
Okay.
we can go to Lactoid, Amanda, Doobie. I think might want to also jump in.
Whenever you want to
Okay.
get to me, you're all fucking wrong, and I'll crush you all.
I'm
School
gonna
choice-
count. I'm
Well,
gonna.
you haven't started yet, so we're waiting.
I'm-
Buddy,
I'm
show up.
gonna counter that, Amanda. I think it is good if schools fail. If there is a school that is incapable of teaching its students what it needs to learn to be successful in life, it is good that that school fails, and it is good that it's recognized that school is not doing what is proper for the kids. Now, I think that instead of that school staying in place, that there should be a replacement school, and the administration of that school hopefully should be able to understand and be able to apply to that community much better than what the previous school was doing. Just because it's not good for a school that fails, I think it is good. I think that it requires responsibility among schools to be able to be like, oh yeah, we do need to be able to do this. Okay, shoot. So we need to do a couple things differently because now we're being judged on this. Now we're actually being allowed to fail. If schools aren't allowed to fail, then they can continue bad practices, they can continue substandard practices, and they can continue this and still be the school and still receive the accreditation. But right now they're not being allowed to fail. I think it is okay for a school to be allowed to fail. Believe it or
Okay,
not, I think it is okay.
But to
Hold
Razor's
on, Amanda,
point-
Amanda.
Okay, sorry. Let's let Razor jump in. Then we'll go.
after you.
Yeah,
Yes,
don't worry.
I'm sorry. Don't worry, Amanda. I think I'm more with you on this. Don't worry. Okay. So I have a couple things I want to say. First, Sprout, I will say you were probably having some misunderstanding with what Wick was saying. Sure, he was saying thousands, but I would say that the way I was hearing it was that there's obviously thousands of ways that the same curriculums can be taught. That's how I at least saw that, but that's beside the point. But this idea of letting schools fail because they're doing bad, that goes to the fact that apparently no one wants to address this. Schools are underfunded because they're not funded in a good way. That's why the schools are failing, because we're not giving them a chance to have any
I was actually gonna-
possibility.
I see
of teaching
this.
kids
65% of
I
funding
see
is
this-
state and federal funding.
Wait, my
Sorry, we got it.
So
We
I
got
see
it.
this.
We got to move on. Hold on. I said Lactoid, then I said Amanda, and then Doobie. Okay.
I can't respond.
I wasn't fully done.
Oh,
though,
you weren't
sorry.
done?
No, not yet.
You can respond later on, Spartacus. I just write it down. I just got to
I
get
would like
some.
to respond.
Mine
No problem.
happens to be
You will.
response,
Real
just
fast.
by
I'll
happenstance, so.
let Sprout respond after I finish with this last little bit here, and then again, there's the fact that it keeps getting like tossed to the side whenever someone asks. Whenever the whole thing of teaching kids CRT, even if they do. I don't 100% see an issue with showing kids that, hey, this happened in the past. Maybe learn from it.
So I'm not specifically.
That's not what
So
we're concerned about.
I'm
I know,
not.
but that's-
So I'm not
I just
specific.
wanna say that last bit.
That's not what
Continue.
CRT praxis is.
I'm not specifically talking about CRT, but I'm sure the people that are specifically talking about CRT as a rebuttal to what's been happening is that they're definitely bring better points because that's not what I came prepared with. What I came prepared with is that I've seen schools, and so you bring up property taxes. Scott is right. 65% of school funding is by state and federal funding. The rest of the funding is via property taxes and other means of funding. And then when you bring that up, the idea that these schools are still failing with the 65% of it being state and federally funded is absolutely insane when you look, because I've seen schools that have
All
been
right, we got to
properly
move
funded.
forward. We got to move
Okay,
forward.
okay,
Sorry.
I a couple seconds. I've seen schools that have been properly funded via property taxes and still failing at teaching their students, still receiving failing grades from the state at teaching their students. Those schools should fail, and the next school that shows up should realize that they're going to be judged on that, and they're going to be allowed to fail. And if they can't do it properly, they'll find someone else who can.
Okay, Lactoid, Amanda, Scott, Doobie, if you want to jump in, let me know. Go ahead.
So I want to keep. I think we're gonna.
All you're wrong.
I'm sure we're gonna keep talking about the CRT element. I think it's important. But to address your point specifically, RYYZN, people often bring up things like the public schools are underfunded, and I don't. It seems like this is almost misinformation.
Yeah.
So I got you cursory Google search, right? This is according to the government, right? The government's own admission. There's only 4 countries that spend more than us per student on education, on public education for elementary schools and high schools, and that's Luxembourg, Norway, Austria, and Iceland. Countries that spend less than us include the Republic of Korea, Belgium, Sweden, Netherlands, Germany, the UK, Australia, Canada, Denmark, France, Italy, Finland, and then the OECD average is considerably less than us. So we're spending a whole fuck more on elementary schools.
Matters.
So hold on, I'm getting to that, right? I'm getting to that. We're spending a whole fuck ton more per student on average, and the overall results are less. Now, one of the questions is, well, averages are nice or whatever, but according to research, the St. Louis Fed, in the United States, for the same year that the OECD is measuring, Black students on per capita receive more funding than white students do. And so Black students receive on average about $14,385 per student, and white students receive $14,263. So in the United States, Black students on average receive more money, and we're in a country that spends dramatically more per student, and yet we're not having good outcomes.
It's population
why
density.
are we underfunded?
What you're missing is population density. So while rich areas do have higher property values, there's more population density, and people don't own things in low socioeconomic status areas. And so because of that, you have you actually have properties that actually have a lot of value to them. People they look at poor people paying $600 to $1,000 a month for rent, and then they look at someone with a millionaire with a really nice house. What they don't realize is that poor person is living in an apartment complex that is worth a lot more to the landlord, and that the landlord is making a profit off of these things. And so even when you look at it, it's not quite as bad in terms of funding as you might think. And there are all kinds of other grants that go. There are all kinds of other funding that we don't talk about, because people are constantly arguing that inner city schools are underfunded. The most underfunded schools in America are poor white communities in the country. Those are the ones.
Rural schools. He's right on this.
Rural.
Amanda.
Yeah. When it comes to the issue in general, I think if we can just sort of pull it back for a second, the bigger question and the reason is what is the point of schools, especially public, at primary school, elementary school, and middle school? And the whole point of the school system in general is to help shape the minds of the children and sort of decide what overall general social practices are good and bad. So I understand the motivation and the drive in this sense is to channel that energy and whatever that discourse is into a certain way that certain people agree with and other people disagree with. Now, while that is perfectly within your right to do so in your country and everything else like that, I think the larger question is that times change, people change, and demographics change. If you look at like all of the kind of people that are coming into the United States now, as well as the different like communities that have lived there the whole time and are growing, like those people's needs are not being addressed within the school system, and that's why this is an issue. Like, so when you're looking at the bigger question of like CRTC or Canada, CRT, whatever these things are, like at the end of the day, these are different social issues that at this current state and time have a value to people. That's why there's a push for them to be in there in the first place. So at the end of the day, like people are perfectly within their right to disagree with that, and people are perfectly within the right to agree with that. The way that I see it is, if you disagree so much with they're doing the public school system, go take your fancy pants dollars and put the kid in private school or homeschool and shut up. Because like at the end of the day, if it's coming out of public money, then you have to think about like the wide majority of people and like what, for lack of a better word, helps for the lowest common denominator of people. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the things that you guys are like suggesting would reflect that, because yeah, there are a lot of people who live in a lot of different areas who are not receiving that adequate education, especially in those original public systems, and that's like totally fair.
Did you want to respond
stolen
to that?
money though. It's stolen money. Like
Gibby,
you took my money to fund the public schools. Like
Gibby, did you want to
stole my
respond to
money,
that?
and then you're like,
Taxes aren't
shut
theft.
up, we're gonna
public
shut up, we're gonna teach
taxpayers.
critical theory to your children and turn them into communists.
Right.
But if you don't want it,
What the
give us
what
our
the heck
money
is critical
and then
theory
put them in the
teach
fancy
communism?
private school.
Perhaps.
Hold on.
Like, no.
Don't
I
take
do-
the bait. Don't
do-
take the bait, Razor. Don't
Gibby,
engage. Do not
Gibby,
engage.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
but
he
that's
just
annoying.
it doesn't
that
it
doesn't
does
always
it,
messes with me.
it doesn't yeah he's
Sure, lost
he's
in
an
the
ANCAP. Okay, DB,
Does
please.
anybody have like a response? So when I bring up how like it turns out that we spend way more like on average, and like the average black student gets more money than the average white student. Like, does this,
may have
does
said
this
it,
change
but
your
I got
mind?
drowned.
As
well, so
I may
you
have
send me
drowned
that
out.
data as well?
yeah,
I'd
I'll,
love to
send,
see
I'll
it.
post it right
please,
here in
me
the.
too, thank
You're asking the wrong, wrong person.
Well, you can make the
now-
same argument about like healthcare, as in like disproportionately, like per capita, the United States, but it results in like overall, like by just about any metric, like life expectancy, infant mortality, whatever. You don't get any. You have like some of the worst bang for your buck, essentially. So like there's
Yeah, so
there's
it
something
seems
I'm
like the issue there
So
isn't
we're
funding, it's where
underfunding
the
it?
funding is, how the funding is being used, right?
Yeah, it sounds like we're not underfunding it. It sounds
Yeah. So, but so I'm
I
curious.
just wanted to
like,
bring it in.
DB,
Amanda, so you said, hey, why not take your fancy pants money to like a private school, right?
Yeah.
And I'd agree with that, right? I think it's a reasonable thing to say. If you don't want your kids being, taught that maybe they're a girl, maybe they're a boy, maybe they're a dog, whatever the fuck in
We're
public
not.
schools,
or a frog.
or a
Oh
frog,
my god.
and maybe take them out, right? If that's where the public schools are going, take them out, put them in private school. Well, that's just kind of what school vouchers allow the people to do, right? They say,
Well,
hey,
yeah, but the school
you're-
vouchers are connected to public, like tax, like it's the Republican Party Political Actions Committee. Like it's not fully
What?
private.
wait, hold on. No, school vouchers would say that, hey, if you want to take your kid right, and put the money that would be going toward the public school to a private school instead, right? The money would follow the kid to a private school. You can do that.
Yeah, but where does the money for the voucher come from?
It's
From the
tax
public
money.
school money.
It's yeah.
The public money.
Wait, hold on. But what's the issue with that though?
You
Well,
would
she
be
thinks- she
subsidized.
thinks-
Okay, so it's
She
the people
thinks
who
that
are
you should
left,
be able to
right? No,
Take
the
your
people
money
who are left,
and,
just real
and
quick.
do whatever they want with your money in the public schools. And if you don't like it, shut up and pay the money, and you can take all the extra money that you presumably have and put your kid in.
And
private
not
school,
only do you need to
but
pay
you
for the
don't
public
get to
schools,
utilize the money, right?
yeah,
you
not
have to
only pay for
subs-
the private schools that you're
wants
not
to
using, but
continue
you
the
also have to pay
process
extra for the
the
private
rich subsidize the public school.
Right.
And if you're
yeah.
not rich, then like fuck off. You just get taught critical
Yeah,
theory.
actually,
And,
Amanda,
like
this is one
that's
way
what you
that poor people, children and poor families can access private schools that have much better outcomes through something like school vouchers, right? Because normally their parents wouldn't have the money.
I mean, perhaps, but I do agree with the original statement that it is a question of public funding dollars and tax revenue. So, like, at the end of the day, if we put that money into the public school system, you probably have a better result. Like, and from a larger, like, I'm talking trolley train kind of shit. Like, we're getting 3 versus 1. Like, I would personally rather be in a situation where that money is being funded into a public system where a lot more people benefit. Because at the end, if we're talking about public school system, we want those people to come out, be good paying members of society. We want to make sure that they're not doing crimes. We want to make sure that they're contributing to society, and we can't do that.
Yeah, but
if
why
we're
would we?
stealing people out?
Why would we assume that private schools aren't going to do all those things?
No,
Like,
they absolutely are. But in terms of like the wider majority, so that we get more bang for our buck, let's go for public so that we get like literally 200 kids as opposed to 20.
Yeah,
Hey,
but the
Doobie.
problem
Hey,
with-
Doobie. Before you do that, then I want to. I'll go to you, Wick. I just need Doobie. This is an answer question for Doobie, not for Scott or for Lactoid, because I know what they're gonna fucking say. Doobie. Do you think we should pay for public roads that we don't use?
Yeah, of course.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So we can pay for public goods even though we may not use them, right? If we are a single individual who doesn't have a kid, I'm childless, right? Should my tax dollars go to public schools that I'm not using?
I don't. Well, yeah, but I think this is different because we in this case you're attempting to use the service or the income that's generated by the public toward educating your child, right? The public is like a pot, and it's like, hey, this is money that's for educating children, and all you're saying is, hey, I'm going to use this to educate my children, but I don't like what you guys are teaching in public schools. You know, the gender ideology, people can be dogs or cats or whatever. I'm saying that just to piss off Razor.
That's
Or
gender.
the
yeah.
CRT thing. The CRT
Take
thing.
your hands and put them on your bum, and you'll be fine, Razor.
Yeah. So I want to take my kid and put them in a Catholic school because maybe I'm a Catholic and I'd like my children to be taught like more traditional Catholic values, while being educated in the Catholic school, which by and large has much better outcomes than a public school, right? So you're still using the money for its intended purpose, right? So I don't understand why we would say, hey, not only do you need to pay toward the public school, but you don't get, if you don't want to use that, you now need to pay extra for a private school. This just seems like a way to make sure that poor families don't have access to private schools, which just further like increases the gap between the rich and the poor that you guys are whining about all the time.
So when we
I have a
when we
response to
look-
that, but I'll deal with that later. Go ahead. You go away.
Yeah, so when we talk about like failing schools and should you be able to take your child out of a failing school and put him in a better school, it all sounds great in theory. But what happens is some people take those kids out and use the vouchers, some do not, and it creates this have and have not issue. There is a better solution. Close the failing school. If a school is failing, close it. That way, everyone is sent off to schools that are not failing. But when you continue to exacerbate the problem by allowing people to remove their resources from a failing system and go and flee, basically, go to somewhere else, it's going to put those who choose to remain for whatever reason, through ignorance of the parents, non-caring of the parents, etc., parents who just don't give a shit, right, about their kids, it's going to put them at a severe disadvantage, even more so than they were. So I'm sympathetic to vouchers. I very much am. But how we see this play out in practice doesn't really work, right? Well,
So
it doesn't.
I guess is your alternative solution is that these kids stay in the failing schools even
No,
though their parents
the failing school gets closed.
well, okay, so you
Close the failing school.
So
Send
your
them on
alternative
somewhere else.
solution is closing the failing school. So
Yes.
letting the failing school fail and close, become not a school anymore.
Close the failing school. Shut it
Okay,
down.
so we're in
Why not
agreement.
just, like-
So we're in
No, that
agreement.
doesn't
We
make
should
any
let
sense.
we should let the school fail and close. We're in agreement.
No, why not just like say, hey, whoever's running the school, you're not doing a good job. We're gonna replace with somebody else, and then
Well, you could try to fix it, but if over a
just
period
closing
of
the
a
school
large
and sending
period of
sending these
time,
kids on like a bus maybe to like other schools like
that
half an hour away or
ensures that
something.
those who
I am
like-
curious. What do you qualify as failure? Because this clearly is a question of like an American standard versus like a not American standard. Because this is a question of
with
test.
what he has behind him.
This is a test question clearly or something like that. Because I do agree with the statement that an indicative of a failure is a lack of funding because you don't have the good shit so you can learn. So like, what do you qualify as failure? Like, because I feel like we all have a different definition of failure.
I'll tell you mine, right? A consistent failure to meet a minimum standard through both GPA and testing results. I think that is a good metric to use. And if a school consistently fails to meet a minimum standard, we can point to that school as failing. And if it consistently does that over a long period of time, we shut it down.
What
we
if
send them
the
off
issue
to
isn't the
do.
school, it's the community the school's in, and it's the parents in the area that the school's in?
Then if it's a community,
like
then
that's
vouchers won't help
fine.
that either because vouchers don't change where you live, right? And so if it's a community, they will continue to fail. That won't fix the
Yeah, but
issue
like
at
neither
all.
would making it more difficult for the kids in the bad community to go to a school at all.
It's not more
making
difficult.
yeah, it is though.
Okay, I'm sorry. In Indiana, it's not more difficult. If you choose to
I
go
don't-
to a
why
different,
don't you
so
put
wait
in
1 second.
specifically
If you listen, you'd realize why it's not more difficult. In Indiana, it's not more difficult. If you choose to go to a different school system and you choose that that's the school you want to go to, that school then has to pick you up. There is no driving you to that school. That district then has to pick you up
Okay.
via a bus and take you to the school district. It's not more difficult to
That's
send
still
a
a
chick
commute.
to a different.
Yeah, this,
Okay,
this, you're
but it's
adding on
not
a
more
commute,
difficult.
and
There's no more
parents are gonna need
difficultness for the
parents-
person who is
Oh, God.
who's going to school. There's no added difficulty.
There is
okay,
added
hold on. I have
difficulty.
to. No, I will say this. I will have to agree on this one. Strangely enough, with Doobie on this one, there is a little bit of an added difficulty because back in middle school for me, I used to live in Arizona. The school I should have gone to was the one that was like literally a 5-minute walk from me. But because of the district I was in for schooling,
Razor?
I had to wake.
I get that. No,
I'm 2-hour
Well,
drive.
let him finish his
stipulate to
point
that.
before you say you get it.
Yeah, I had literally the bus had to come and get me at 4 in the morning in order to get to my school, which was like an hour away from me, versus the 5-minute walk I could have done.
Is that your point? Because I get that. I understand that. I totally on board with that. It does create a little more effort and things like that. But that is still
4 in the morning is a lot.
preferable to keeping your kids in a failing school, right? It is also vouchers, again, do not solve that problem, right? It does not solve the problem of the added hassle of commutes and stuff from shipping your kid out to another school district, right? It just does not solve that problem. So again, I think it's not a perfect solution, but the best solution is to allow
It's
schools
homeschooling,
that
actually.
continuously fail to be shut down, and
Nick.
for other schools that are not failing to pick up the slack.
Like, wouldn't
Is there-
vouchers
so
like at
is
least
it-
they would help the situation?
Razor, is there
because you
no
could- private schools nearby? Like, you have more options.
Razor,
least send your
was there
kid.
no school districts between the 5-minute school district that you said was failing you and the hour away school district that you said wouldn't have been failing you? Is there no difference? Like, is there no school districts in between? Because I find it hard to
Well, I
believe
didn't.
that
I
there's
didn't. I didn't
schools
say
that are
that
an
the
hour
schools were
away.
I didn't say the schools were failing me. I said the school that I should have gone to, because it was based off the district I was, and so this is more going towards the. I was just mainly.
You had the
agreeing
wrong
with
zip
Doobie on
code,
the-
basically.
Yeah, basically.
So-
I had the wrong zip code, so I had to go to a very specific school. So with the school thing.
Okay,
with
so in school
I
choice, you
agree
can
with
go
you
the
that-
5-minute one way. Congratulations.
Yes, I would have been able to. So, but I was just slightly agreeing with Dewey on the fact that having to go to a different school, there it can be troubles.
So I have a question
Can
for
be
the
more
pro
difficult,
school
okay.
choice people here that
And then
isn't
Corey.
about the obvious instantiation of critical consciousness that is being specifically targeted by large corporations and donors with this school choice, because they want to teach critical race theory to your kids. And they want to make sure it's in the private schools. But setting that aside, because you want your children to grow up to be communists, if you believe, right, that the market is such a great thing, and that the market structure of schools and allowing bad schools to fail and having an incentive structure with the fact that creative destruction can occur, how do you mesh that with a support of introducing state funding into these schools via the students, and then the almost certain things and regulations from the state that will come from that, like an inability to discriminate about who you put in your school and who you don't put in your school, or like certain educational standards that don't exist currently, or just simply the fact that there's free money in the form of students out there now that these systems exist. And so we're going to take them in and then give special pleading when things go poorly for state money.
Public
So, no,
schools
if
can
there- if there's-
discriminate.
if-
Just
if
I want to
there's-
be clear. Public schools can discriminate, but they can discriminate based on behavior. If you do not meet certain behavioral standards, you are kicked out, you are expelled. They do not have to service.
Yeah, but that's not really the question he was asking.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
So a public school should not be able to discriminate
No, that's not
discriminate
the
against
question he was
kids that
asking.
okay, so he is talking about discrimination
I
of
can answer
kids.
the
He said
question
he
after.
basically said schools should be able to discriminate based on who they want in their school district and who they don't want in their school
No, that's
district.
not what he said.
Okay, then
So-
please explain what you said further, Fabian, because I obviously missed it, and it obviously wasn't
I
about
am-
The
discrimination.
concern is if you
kinda-
introduce
kinda-
public money,
you hop to it. you hop to like a parallel track. What I'm saying is like currently a lot of private schools do well because they only accept prestigious kids, or they only accept kids with certain test scores and things like that. And the more funding you give through these programs, the more demands by the taxpayer.
It's like a hook.
You're using our tax-paying dollars to like fund this hoity-toity school that disproportionately accepts white and Asian kids. This has to stop. Like, you're introducing the very things that ruined public schools, apart from all of the shit of like companies like this, like Psychus, making sure that you teach your second graders, your third through fifth graders about puberty blockers and hormones and gender non-binary ideology.
Corey
The whole
should go.
point
He's
is to
had
put
his
this
hand
in
up
your
for a
schools.
while.
So Scott,
Oh no, it's just frozen like this.
to answer the question, like, because you asked like to the people who are pro school choice, like how do you square that with like the creative destruction? Well, creative destruction not only involves the failure of bad schools or bad organizations, but it also allows for the creation of new ones. That's the whole idea of creative destruction. So when the current system is you have the public schools, which is free, and then if you want to go to a private school, not only do you have to pay all the costs for the public school, you have to pay on top of that. You have to pay the additional cost of going to private school. So obviously making the money tied to the student like creates a new market for people who, okay, I'm going to want to send it to the private schools as opposed to the public schools because I'm not going to be spending extra money. I'm not going to be spending my tax dollars and extra on top of that. I'm actually going to be spending like, what I otherwise wouldn't. If I understand the concern now about, well, this is actually like a hook to get all these private schools like made into indoctrination centers. The issue is that currently public schools are currently that, and private schools exist despite that.
All schools are indoctrination centers. Every single one.
Under creative destruction, I don't see why you couldn't have private schools reject voucher students, right? You could have private schools say, we're not going to take voucher students, and we're also not going to accept any of the requirements.
There is no school that isn't an indoctrination
center.
center.
We already got too many. I'm still waiting for
so that allows like more choice amongst the private institutions, whether they're like in this case, well, I guess more choice by the parents, whether or not they're going to actually like
other people want to talk, so I'll respond to it later. But just
okay, because right now the option is I'm going to pay a whole lot more to send my kid to like a non-indoctrination center, or they have to go to an indoctrination center. At this point, like if we institute school choice with vouchers, at the very least, like there's now 3 options. I can still pay to have them go to like a good non-indoctrination center, or I have to send them to like the public schools, or I can send them to these private schools that are sort of halfway in between. That's more consumer choice, which makes it better in my mind.
Corey, then Amanda.
Okay, that's just for Corey.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I guess maybe not to derail, but what I would say, Lactoid, and maybe even Scott, like I think like every school is an indoctrination center at some point. Like I don't.
So what's being taught really matters, doesn't it?
Indoctrination. We have the good indoctrination.
Don't steal Wick's low IQ takes.
Yeah, don't do that.
Like based replies to this shit. Like we all believe.
I'll second him afterwards. Don't worry, Corey. I got you.
Let's be low IQ together. I'm all for it. But so going back to like Wick, I want to hopefully understand your position better, because like you mentioned that you're okay with schools failing based off of like sort of like some certain metric. Like it seems like your metric was like failure of like
average GPA and test scores.
Yeah, so like as in like if 51% or 50.1% of students have like a failing GPA, that's like a failing school.
Well, you can look at the whether it's the straight average or the mean or like the exact standard. We can talk about that, right? I don't know.
No. Corey's been waiting.
He asked me a question, didn't he?
Did you ask
me? That was pretty much like all I wanted to know. It was like, you want some sort of metric. What I would say is sort of as a Canadian, and maybe like Amanda will back me up in terms of like, so at least in my province, Quebec, where I will fully admit and concede that there are many hospitals in shambles that are sort of like quote unquote failing hospitals, but we don't start like demolishing them because like for some communities like that's like their only hospital, and so like there's large pushes like renovate them, update them, to hopefully like turn around them into hopefully successful hospitals. I don't see
why
private
hospitals, right?
And
What?
well,
in
well,
that
so
area, private
no,
health
no,
providers.
no. Well, Quebec has now a tutors like that's a whole separate conversation, which I love to have with you. But like, yeah, I would say the semi-privatization of
Private
healthcare in Quebec has like also ruined many aspects of healthcare.
Thank
But
That's
you.
a
like,
problem.
yeah, totally. But I don't see why that sort of like same mentality like can't be applied to schools. Of like, you know, you
Can I
there
ask
should
you a
be
question,
ways
Carl?
to but basically there should be ways to turn a failing school, or by your standard failing
Sure.
school, into a successful school.
But and I'm not super familiar with the Quebecian healthcare issue, right?
True
But
Canadian healthcare.
fair enough, true
Yeah.
Canadian healthcare. But is there no point whatsoever where they would shut down a hospital based on poor
No.
performance?
It's-
None.
it's-
And you don't see a problem?
What if they weren't
it's the
washing
same
the
standard.
syringes? At that point, we'd be like, hey, you gotta.
No, it just
I
means
mean,
like
you know what? Look, like there's a.
Wait, you're supposed to wash syringes in Canadian?
or yeah, oh, sure, replace them. I guess.
All you need is just a little bit of Dawn.
Well, yeah, look,
Just
if it
the
cleans
tip.
ducks, it cleans off blood. Okay, that's
Yeah, you got it.
And some alcohol, and you're good to go. Exactly.
okay. What if they didn't replace the syringes? Like, what if
Well,
they're
no, so like
to this point, no, but to this point, like I think it is a question. I don't know. I think, and perhaps you know, forgive us, the Canadians on this panel, got to apologize for something.
Lockjaw is one
But
of them,
like,
by the way, Amanda. Just so you know.
oh, okay. Well, come on, man. What's that freaking thing in the background there?
Oh
Get
my
that-
God.
So
Simpsons-
there,
People believe this. Like it's people believe the meme.
I gotta say, like when it comes to it, I think like I, for one, I do not have the same definition of failure as you guys do, because I would say a failure of an education system is the failure of the community. Is this like community actually thriving as a result of pushing out kids that are better people and members of society? And to the question of a propaganda machine, yeah, of course it's a propaganda machine. If we look back historically, before we had a public education system, we just had a bunch of rich people who could pay for private tutors so that their kids could get a good education. And the only people who had access to that were the highest, wealthiest, whitest people of the land. So when it comes to it, the question of what we're trying to do is get a bunch of people who are not otherwise going to have access to these things through a system so that they're better members of society. I do not understand why that's
I've got a question for you, Amanda. So when you say you judge the school systems based off members of society, so basically you judge the school system based off the members of society that are still in the area, correct?
I would look at the surrounding areas. You're looking at demographics. You're looking at local crime rates. You're looking at the news reports. You're looking at a full contextual analysis of how the community has developed or not developed as a result of either educating or not educating their children.
Okay,
Which
but
would then, like,
the issue becomes that when you are educated, when you become successful, if you grew up in a bad neighborhood, you typically move out of that bad neighborhood
Some
moved
people
and
do,
typically
others
it's
stay.
typical when you're successful. It's typical. It's atypical. It's
stay.
atypical to stay. It's
No.
atypical to stay. It is
But you
typical.
have the
It is.
possibility of both.
I'm
there's only
sorry.
so many places in Quebec to go, right? There's only so many
But
places.
it
Especially
is
with their housing
it
market.
is it is however typical to leave if you become successful. It is however typical to leave because you want to create a better life for yourself. You want to create a better life for your kids. So it is typical to leave to somewhere you find as wait one second, please for one fucking second. Thank you. It is typical to leave because you want to create a more prosperous life for yourself. You want to create a more prosperous life for your children. So it is typical to leave somewhere as to where you can find somewhere that would be more prosperous for you and your children. And it is typical that people that are more successful leave the worst neighborhood that they were in to move into a better neighborhood.
Okay, so can I potentially address that point?
Go
ahead.
and then you can address it, and then Doobie and Razor.
I'll be quick. What I would just say is like, yeah, you're not entirely wrong, but like there's totally the reciprocal. This is one of the reasons why, let's say, for example, in Quebec, medical schools have certain quotas or reserved seats for Indigenous peoples, because very often those who go to medical school, those who are Indigenous go to medical school, they often return to their underserved communities in order to bring them medicine because they're an underserved community. And so like it's not a universal like mass exodus of leaving an underserved community.
Doobie.
What was I going to say?
You
yeah.
dancing too much.
So I'm curious. So let's say I'm a parent that does not buy the gender theology shit. I don't buy the trans stuff. I don't buy this non-binary thing. I don't want my kids being indoctrinated with this. Right? I want them to have the indoctrination that I like, which maybe is like more like traditional American conservative value focus, right? But I'm also poor, right? So I don't have the money to throw toward a private school. Like, would you tell this parent just like, hey, put up with your kid being indoctrinated into a belief system that is contradictory to your own, that is going to lead to your child feeling maybe like separate from you, because they're being taught or indoctrinated into a belief system that is actually like they're actually being taught that your belief system is bad and harmful, and they shouldn't believe these things that you believe, right? So this is like creating some conflict between the parent and the child just because you want to send them to fucking school. So if I don't have money to send my kid to a private school and I don't know enough on my own to homeschool them, like what does that parent do?
That's the risk that
Okay.
we take in
This
society.
is the
That's
problem.
the
Okay,
risk
so
of
hold
life.
on.
Choice.
Hold.
This is the danger of school choice. Is as of right now, the person that you laid out, you said they can't send to private school currently because they don't have enough funding. Fair enough. But there are tons and tons of poor communities, religious communities, the Mormons that have figured out ways with very, very limited funding to get together with the community to homeschool their children. And that is still an option that currently exists.
Yeah.
Very often what they will do is they'll get together with the community and say, look, I will take 5 kids on Mondays. And that's all that they do is they take their own kid plus a few other kids on Mondays. Another parent does it on Tuesdays. Another does it on Wednesdays. They teach in areas where they actually know what they're talking about, and they don't teach in areas where they don't know what they're talking about. And there are tons of programs that are not that expensive. The problem with school choice is that it is designed to invite regulation onto this so that you don't have that right anymore.
Do you not
It
think there
is
should be any
UNESCO.
regulation?
Sorry.
on
We can't
homeschooling?
go too far
UNESCO
onto that.
I'll be super quick. UNESCO specifically states in their that their mission goal is to help design and deliver more inclusive, equity weighted, and SDG orientated policies, and that is why they set the SDE for quote quality and inclusive education for all. That with this express desire to use things like school choice and the quote public-private partnerships as a means of enforcing diversity, equity, inclusion, critical theory, all of the shit that you don't like. Make sure that this is required and state mandated that you be taught this in private schools and eventually being taught these things as a state mandate for homeschooling. Right now, if you can work hard and achieve financial success, you can get your kids out of this shit. But that is a limited window if you support school choice, because eventually all of these governmental standards will poison and infect these because they state that they want to do that. That is their desire. That is the point of school choice.
Sure.
And libertarians and conservatives
sure,
have bought a fucking
sure.
grift.
Did you have anything else to say? Then we got to go to Razor and then Lactoid.
Well, I'm actually, I guess I'd ask Scott the same question. So like, so I understand what the concern, right? And I think it's a valid concern, right? But if I'm not like near any like Mormon communities or Christian communities, and I don't really have access to these like groups of people. We're gonna take 5 or 6 kids at a time and like homeschool them. Like I feel like the school choice thing, like Lactoid said earlier, is a good middle ground. Yeah, there's the risk of this being a hook. They used to introduce legislation. They used to like pollute this kind of like safe haven from the CRT and the gender ideology shit. They use it to pollute these systems, right, with the same toxin that's in the public school. But I think in accepting that risk, right, and fighting against that risk, I think you're giving a lot of people the opportunity to access the safe haven that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise.
I think it's the same argument that you would use against the Patriot Act, is the idea that you're like, I'm going to get some temporary comfort for safety. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give more power to the government to regulate these things in their own interests, which just happens to be the Patriot Act are the same powers that the state got that they're now using against parents that attempt to protest against these things. And that's why Merrick Garland has specific signifiers that the FBI uses to target and track information on parents that fight back against this.
We can't.
Let's
schools
go.
project
Let's
this
go.
culture
But Razor's been waiting. We got Razor. Like to
Thank
it.
you.
Quick.
Please, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll start off by saying thank you, Dewey, for at least being fully honest and saying that you're okay with the whole thing of indoctrination for teach indoctrination for me, not for thee. Like you're fully fine with brainwashing
Yeah,
kids.
we just wanted we wanted the better version of indoctrination. Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You want hateful. But as I was going to say, the
Yeah, dude,
we've been
shut
going on
up,
a lot of
bigot.
the we've been getting a lot of the choice. We've been going on the choice aspect of it. The other half of the statement to start this whole thing was about like what could it possibly do to democracy if say a lot of people end up picking private places that are more the biblical value ones. So my big fear about that, obviously it is to the whole indoctrination thing, because all schools are basically indoctrination camps at all times. But I always feel like at least the type of schooling that I would want for future kids versus what the people who are against me would want, mine actually teaches actual history and good and actual science and everything, while these biblical value places will teach shit like will have a possibility of teaching shit like creationism and or something ahistorical. Like it will never. You'll end up creating a bunch of people who have no clue
So
about
wait.
the past.
Like
that we
CRT.
have.
So
when,
wait,
when
so
you
wait,
have
wait,
kids,
so wait,
when
if
you have
you
kids,
if you
can
teach
them whatever
you
dumb
teach-
fucked up shit you want to teach them, and your lack of understanding
If
of
you-
history,
if you
and teach
teach-
them your commie propaganda bullshit. But leave my kids and leave my wallet alone.
okay, but if you teach the Big
Fuck
Bang,
off my kids.
if you teach the Big Bang, why would it be why would it so if you teach the Big Bang, why would it be bad for a school to in the same breath, in the same way, teach creationism?
Because you could,
I
of course,
hope
have
that's self-evident, but I guess not.
yeah, because
Sorry if the
because
No, I'm
table-
asking. I'm
I
asking
can
because
introduce you guys
he's asking.
to
Let me answer.
somebody.
He's asking. Let me
I can
answer.
introduce you guys to somebody who would totally debunk evolution in 4 hours for you. He'd fucking run circles around it.
Yeah,
Razor,
go ahead.
please.
No,
Bring
okay,
it.
let me
I'll
let me
take
answer.
that
Let me
on.
answer Sprout's question.
Don't bring Darn from the panel, please.
That's exactly what I'm thinking about.
I
Yeah.
know that's what you're thinking about.
Now I've lost it. Sprout, can you repeat what you
because
said?
well, if you're gonna teach a theory, why not teach basically a
Why not teach
op-
magic?
oppositional theory, right? So
So okay, I got it now. So you're
Right.
saying like with Big Bang versus creationism, because one has little to no evidence, and
they
the
both
other
have
one
little
can-
to no evidence.
Oh,
Big
whoa,
Bang
whoa,
has
whoa,
little
whoa.
No,
evidence.
Big
Oh, that's
no,
not.
no.
Whoa.
Big Bang has so much evidence to it that it's
So
What's
much
the
evidence.
evidence?
Are you going to?
No,
are you
no,
gonna source
Doobie
that?
don't.
I'm sorry.
Theory, what
No,
do
no,
you mean?
Razor, what's the
It's a
evidence?
theory. It has
Razor,
so
how
much
do you know
evidence
that the
to
world is
sorry.
round?
Well, no,
Because
I'm
of the
not.
evidence.
I'm
Oh,
not.
it's a
I'm
religious
not.
belief
So
you
wait,
have,
wait.
right?
I'm not.
You
I'm
don't
not
actually
suggesting.
know. You've just
I'm
been
not-
told this.
So
You
I'm
haven't
not
bothered to actually look
suggesting.
into it for yourself. You don't actually know. You've just been told this in Reddit or somewhere, so you believe it's true. That's what
So
it
I
is.
don't
It's
know.
just a
So
religious
I-
belief, just like Sprouts.
I'm not suggesting the world is flat. I'm suggesting that the Big Bang does not have as much scientific proof as what you are offering right now. You're saying there's a bunch of
Because I'm
scientific
a
proof that
layman.
proves the Big Bang. The Big Bang, according to the large majority of scientists, is not scientifically proven, which is why it's still considered a theory.
Oh boy,
Correct?
oh boy,
Okay,
guys,
we're not
oh no,
doing
no,
that.
no,
We're not doing
please.
that.
Right?
Let's no, sorry, hey,
versus-
both of you, knock it off,
So
right? So
scientific-
blindly in the
alright.
blind here. All right, let's move
we're
to
going a little bit
Lactoid.
It should be a separate panel. Separate
Yeah,
panel.
absolutely.
separate thing.
Before
We're
Corey
good,
like
but-
blows his gasket, and fuck you, Doobie, to instigating that. I saw that train wreck coming a mile away.
You know it's true.
Lactoid,
I also did too. That's why I didn't get too
Lactoid.
mad.
You walk right into it.
So-
Lactoid, quick.
So
Yeah,
just three quick points. Razor, I agree that like there is a real concern of schools teaching ahistorical history. This is a concern that me and Scott and Doobie have expressed a lot of concern about. Right, this is the whole problem.
Why do kids and tell
Like CRT. But Scott, I have an issue with one thing, and I feel like we're going back and forth on this. So this maybe it's been my last word on it. Like I think as long as you give, I think you should give the option. Like the private schools should have the option to not take the vouchers, which I mean currently they don't have to, to my best understanding. And so by instituting the voucher program in school choice, I don't think you're necessarily taking away the options of a propaganda-free school, even in worst case scenario. And you have the added benefit of, it's going to take them a while to really dig their hooks in to like really start the misinformation flow.
I mean, they're
And,
already
and,
there.
and so
in a
my
lot of
kids,
ways.
like my kids will at least get a better experience
Working
doing
way
that than like going to a public school.
Yeah,
Even
so-
if
so-
that's
so
like their
here's the
long
issue.
game, right?
Like right. So the issue
And I
is
have one
is
more
that
point
you're
after you
like,
respond.
yeah, the what you're kind of describing is like there may be a temporary gain for like the next 10 to 15 years
Yeah.
where people will have choice, and it will be overall from a consequentialist perspective in the current 10 to 15 years better for those individuals until we
time frame in which I
destroy
Better for
wanna
me.
get to it.
and until the time in which we completely erode the freedoms of parents to be able to educate their children effectively, right?
Then they'll just become public
for the
schools.
now, right? Yes, they will.
And then
just
and then
become public
new
schools.
private
That's the
schools will start
point.
up, right?
Except that's not how that's going to work. What it's going to work is that we currently have a fragile system where private schools are relatively safe from regulation because they're not taking those funds. And once the capacity to take those funds is put in, it's not going to be just the private schools that take them. It's going to be this constant encroachment upon everyone. We have to draw lines in the sand and say, stop trying to destroy the market here and institute new policies and changes. And they say that they want to do this, that this is their goal in doing this. I'm not like creating a conspiracy theory.
Right.
I'm just quoting the motherfuckers. That say
Would
that
would
they
you
want
would
this.
you be in favor of like when these when the voucher programs are passed or when this legislation is passed that
Yeah.
there like is specific things in there that say any potential regulations that come from this
That's it.
oh,
That's
like
currently happening in Arizona.
are completely tied
Arizona
to the
school
voucher.
choice.
Right, but hold on.
Arizona school choice already has that written.
And it's tied to the voucher, right? Not
Yes,
it's-
Arizona
and that makes
legislation
sense.
says
That's a
the
good
law
thing,
that
right?
you can't do that. It does make sense if you believe that that'll actually fucking stay that way from this program. It's not gonna when there's specific when the funding and the people behind it want to utilize this as a means of pushing these things. It's already in fucking Catholic.
I'm more optimistic than you.
I-
I think.
right,
I wanted to
it's
ask
already
one
in
last
Catholic
question. I
schools.
wanted to ask one last question, and this is like a more general question to the panel because we talked a lot about the indoctrination, and obviously there's disagreement there. I provided links a while ago showing that like the U.S. spends way more, and the spending is actually a lot more equitable than a lot of people believe, and we're still having complete shit in terms of like outcomes. And so like my question is like when private schools show that they can do it for a lot cheaper, and this like provides more options to parents. Do you have that's like a proposal that we're making when it comes to like voucher programs or private schools? Is there any proposal from you guys with exception of just like no, you need even more money into it? We need to dwarf every other OECD country and just like spend 50 grand per student or some crazy shit. Like what is the solution?
Did you
I
not-
do, but I'll do it later. Let's go to
Yeah.
Wick, and I haven't forgotten about you, DB. I do want to respond to you.
So
at some
I'll
point.
answer that question, and I'll just repeat very briefly because I've said it before. Close failing schools, then open up schools like that are working, right? Like tear it down, try again, right? I think that is the best way forward. I think that it
It's still managed by the same people.
goes
Though.
away. Not necessarily. Unless you're talking about the state itself, like it's
Yeah,
still managed
The
by the
Department of
state.
Education.
I think that that isn't always why, and I know you would think, oh, it's the Department of Education that's failing.
Or the
I would
state's
point
Department of
to-
Education, right?
Yeah, the state. I would point to again, public schools within a state. Some perform better than others because they are managed by different teams within the Department of Education, right? Like
Right,
so,
just
some
replace
do well,
principals
some
and stuff.
do not.
Because here's the issue: we
that's
do
one thing.
we do this right now. Like if public schools like perform dramatically under like certain like markers, they can lose access to some funding, and they can have issues that way. But
Which only
obviously-
exacerbates the problem because they lose access to funding
and they can fire principals and they can fire people. But the response to this has largely been public educators teaching the test. Right? We're gonna take some time just to teach the test to try to hit the minimum so we can we can keep our jobs and we can keep our funding. And so if this is the response and there's not like a private market scenario where like the parents are like, well, what did you learn today? Oh, we just learned the test. Well, okay, I'm moving you to this one over here because they're locked in the current one, right? Because there's no school choice. I mean, it seems like we're doing your solution now, Wick, but we're just like not working.
So
I
real
disagree with
fast-
that. But
So
the-
real fast, I just want to say sorry, Wick. When it comes to the whole thing of like when I was talking about the funding, I think a lot of time people don't realize that obviously even if we are spending more with everything being bad, I feel like we just need better be able to better allocate is the best way to say
Absolutely,
it.
yeah. Just
Right,
change
which is
how
why you need the
we're
free
like.
market,
Look,
because
there are.
with
I am
free
not.
Most
A,
of that's
I am
on
not an
on
education
instruction.
expert.
I don't
I'm
Resource
gonna
know.
be real quick.
allocation.
Let me
No,
finish
no,
my,
wait,
let me
wait,
finish
wait,
my
wait, wait.
point, please. So I'm not an education expert. I don't know. I can't not sit through you right now and give you a full solution. But I have every full faith and confidence because we've done it before. We could do it again. There are model schools in America that are publicly funded, that perform well above averages, and we can use what techniques we can glean from those, and we can apply it to other standards. That said, I want to talk about this idea of indoctrination. I want to talk about this idea of regulation within schools. I am all for regulating education, right? I am all for it. I think it's a good thing. Now we can talk about what should be regulated and how much should be regulated and where those regulations should be. But I would argue that society having certain standards of what is and is not taught in a school system is a public good. We do not, right, want children to not know what math is. There has to be some form of regulation.
Yeah, but I
We
don't
do
want
not
them to
want
be
children.
trans.
That's fair, right? That's fair. You don't want that, but sometimes it happens anyway, gang, whether you go to a private school or a public
If
school,
they go to your
whether you're
public school,
homeschooled
yeah.
or not, right? I don't know the stats on it, right? But the point is, we can argue where those regulations should be. A lot of people would say, get rid of private schools. I don't agree with that. Get rid of homeschooling. I don't agree with that either. But I do think that there should be certain standards that people who go to these education centers that are non-public, like private or homeschooled, have to meet before they are able to receive accreditation from the state. I think that's a good thing. Right? You could say, well, I don't want any regulation, and I point to you. That's going to destroy us. That's just going to destroy us, gang. It's going to set us back years.
Well, like math and like spelling, but not like political shit, right?
But you would agree with some regulation then, right?
Also,
No.
like let's look at the fact
Yeah,
that
to some extent.
State-based regulation is fucking stupid and it hasn't worked. And you keep explaining all the ways it hasn't worked, and then you're like, so let's not do anything different. We'll just
Your
do
idea
it.
is,
We're doing
well,
what
you
we're
know
doing
what?
better.
Our boat's
So there should be a
broken,
curriculum.
So our boat has a hole in it, so let's blow it the fuck up.
So there
That's
should be
your
a
You're saying that
curriculum.
we should
No.
close the failing school.
No, I'm saying I'm agreeing with RYYZN. We need more proper resource allocation for better education systems. And there is
No one
type of
disagrees.
proper
Talk about
resource
low IQ.
allocation
Yeah,
that
yes,
is
we should
free
have
market.
better
the best.
resource
Right,
allocation.
the market.
Who disagrees with that? Can
That
we
is the
can we
best
raise our
way for
hand
proper
if we
resource
disagree
allocation.
that we need better allocation of
market doesn't do
resources?
it.
You
for
for public
disagree,
education?
dumbass, because you're for
Absolutely
centrally
not.
planned
I
education.
think we should have, but our ideas of what's better, that's where the difference lies, my
Yeah,
friend.
because I understand
I
basic
obviously
econ
agree
and you
we should
don't.
have better resource allocation. You think we should have better
Solve
resource
the economic
allocation, and we're
calculation problem.
arguing about what
Solve
is
the
the
ECP.
better way to resource
Solve the
allocate.
ECP. Solve the
Okay,
ECP.
Amanda, were you going to say something?
Oh, you can't? Oh, okay. Shut up then.
I mean, nothing specifically other than the fact that like I still do agree that like it is in the general public good to maintain adequate funding of public school systems so that you create better individuals and people in society. Like I really, all I'm thinking here is that thank God I'm not in this system, because also especially like having like the Catholic school is better funded in Canada, and that is like it's a public system, but it's still like the whole big thing is put your kid in Catholic school, they get a better education. Screw public school, but what is it? It results in this two-tiered system of the individuals that it comes out with, and there are some really smart kids that never went to that, have like piss poor funding, they still get to university because of like a variety of different, or college, sorry, a variety of different things. I feel like at the end of the day, like if the measurement of failure is test scores, then yeah, for sure, that then by all accounts, this is a problem of the market, and let's change the market. But as somebody who does not think that education should be like a left to the market perception, then I would say, why don't you focus on funding the schools so that you can better the communities? But forgive
Amanda,
me, that might be
The
Canadian.
government is the one that's failing.
We
not-
also call it university here.
The U.S.
You admit
funds
that the
our
market
schools
is doing
more than
great.
Canada.
Pardon?
The U.S. funds our school, like the U.S. schools are better funded than Canadian schools. Like when you're talking about
Like,
underfunding, like the
I
U.S.
think-
So I'm looking right here. The U.S. spends like per student more than $2,000.
This is what I was saying.
I
I
would
had to have an
$2,200
issue
more
with.
per student.
It's a gerrymandering thing, right? Like it's a question of like, are you on this line or you're on that line? So like, yeah, it may be better funded, but like, I don't know if the question is across the board. Like Canada, especially in the case like what was mentioned earlier about public healthcare, Canadian public healthcare can be really frustrating sometimes because of the public funding means that it can be very slow. It means that like you might have a longer wait time. It means that you might have some hospital.
I use all those arguments, yeah.
But in that respect,
That's why
like
socialism
it's
sucks.
it's not a reason
No.
for the fact that not everybody has the same access to the capital in the first place to make these decisions. I don't think it's a reason to get rid of those things because at the end of the day, they serve a very good common good, being like that they help the individuals of society. So
I don't think you're getting rid of.
Well, so
No,
here's
you're not
here's
getting
the
rid
difference.
of. You're replacing a failing school with a successful school. You're not like getting rid of education
You're
for
building
students.
a
Like,
new
these
school?
students,
What?
these students no longer have education.
Oh,
As
But
to
you're
what
I feel like you'd be relying on some sort of private funding in order to make that happen, which means you need certain stakeholders that see it as a good, profitable idea once you bring that new school into the community.
Ooh,
This isn't a case.
That's why it's good.
So,
And here's the difference.
Lactoid, go, and then I want to
That's what you
respond to
need.
Doobie and Lactoid. They both had questions for me. I didn't get to.
Right, and here's the difference, I think, Amanda, when we're talking, and Corey as well, when we're talking about like healthcare and education, because there's different arguments I think against like the public healthcare system, but like at the end of the day, you do have a little bit more facts, like certain stats on your side when it comes to the public healthcare system as opposed to like
No, they
the
don't.
U.S. system.
Don't bite that bullet. No, they
Oh,
don't. It's shit.
okay.
system.
We can talk about that. We can talk about that in a second. Okay. But so I'm assuming here. I'll phrase it this way. You guys believe that there are certain statistical betterments that come from your system as opposed to the U.S. healthcare system. I'm assuming. The issue is like all those stats just don't exist here, right? The U.S. spends more money and gets like way worse way worse education outcomes. Our current way of doing it, right?
So
So
maybe you should
the criticism that you guys have of the U.S. healthcare system is that we spend a lot of money and that like we don't get good healthcare outcomes. But in this
Again,
case,
it's
like
because of
the current
allocation.
education system spends way more money and gets poor outcomes. And because you guys think it's an argument to change the healthcare system based on that logic, isn't this also an argument to change the education system?
Yeah, there shouldn't be private education.
No, because we don't. So currently, we have primarily public education, and like this is the problem, right? This is where most of the underperforming happens.
I
like how
Where
it's
most of
funny
the
how
overspending
communists
happens.
So I'm
ideology
gonna.
allowed.
I want to respond to
They're just
both
like, ha, ha, ha.
Doobie and
rights.
Lactoid. Doobie.
Yeah, no,
And
that's pretty good.
something I guess Amanda was touching on a little bit. You asked we had much like an hour ago. We had a back and forth, and said that when it comes to the money attached to a child within a voucher, right? You're saying, well, the moment that you have a kid, and you are going to use this public good, right, or at least the service of education, then it simply makes sense to take that money if you decide to, and move that over to a private system if you so choose, right? That money is the purpose of that money is to educate your child. Did I summarize your correctly?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. So my problem is that I think you are incorrect in what the purpose of that money is. The purpose of that money isn't to educate your child. Instead, it's to create a system in place that can adequately educate any child who would like to use those services. That like, it's not that the public good doesn't come into the fact that an individual person got an education. It's that our society provides a minimum standard of services to our children, right? That they can all use for free. And that's where that value comes in. So to ground that in something real life, if we had a town of 100 people and 100 families, right? And 50 of those families exited the public school system, right? When all of them were previously in there. That school system all of a sudden doesn't have enough to operate, right? And so it collapses. even if 10 more families move in and try to use that system, it still is not operating. It still does not have the ability to operate. That's a failing school system. That's a failing. That is a public good that cannot be accessed. So the point is to have that institution ready for people to use, rather than necessarily educating Doobie's kid. So I'll you respond to that. Then I also want to respond to Lactoid.
I think I disagree with that. So I'd agree that with the like overall sentiment, this money is meant to go toward like creating a system, but I don't understand why we would say that the system that this money could be going toward funding would be like a private system, right? But so long as it's like an education system created to educate your children. And so like, sure, you can say, hey, it's not specifically set aside for your child, right? There's no like Doobie's Child Fund that exists. But if the money's going to an education system, I don't see why it couldn't be a private one, right? If that's and the issue isn't so much that. So if what I don't understand, maybe you can explain this to me, right? So if my child isn't there, right, they're not getting the money that they would have gotten if my child were there, right? But like, what's the extra expense, right? That they're then losing out on, right? So
Well,
yes, because like if my child's like not there, they're just not getting the money that would have gone there for my child. So like, yeah, they don't gain that money, but they're not losing anything really, right?
Sure. Well, and this is pretty simple. And as a business owner, I'm sure you'll understand this, right? It's not simply the cost of running a school system isn't simply the collection, right? Adding up all the children who show up, right? There's a whole list of other costs involved, right? Including like the teacher's salary, right? That's kind of fixed to a certain
The
extent.
administration that sucks all the money.
Yeah, there's the administration, there is the property that like maintain the property in and of itself. There is buying material like beyond like school books or whatever, right? Like all of that is locked in, and at some point if you decrease the funding base, you're at a point where you can't operate it for everyone, right? Even though there's still like 60 families, right, who are using this system, they don't have the tax base that's large enough to fund the entire system.
But isn't the issue there not that people are sending their children elsewhere? It's that the school isn't good enough to keep parents sending their children to that school, right? So if parents have decided that, hey, the school's not working out for me, I want to send them somewhere else, why would we penalize the parents and the children by sending them to a school that their families decided isn't working out for them?
I don't think it is a penalty. We're going to disagree. I don't know. We're going to be able to be eye to eye on this one, but I don't think it is a penalty. This is like, okay, you are free to go, right? You can pay for a school, right? You could pay for a private school. Why doesn't this
just trap like poor children in fucked up schools?
Yeah.
Why?
PrimeCayes, I'm sorry, but what you're talking about is an idea that of economies of scale. The problem is that economies of scale doesn't apply to something that there's like is inelastic in terms of the way that you deal with the students and the teacher relationship. So like, yes, like there is an idea of like economies of scale. Like if I produce cars, for example, right? The bigger I am as a company, the cheaper it gets for me to produce that specific thing because I can buy things in bulk, because I can, because I can like up my I can take a percentage of my profits for automation, like all these different things to make it cheaper produce a car, whereas a startup has difficulty. When you're talking about school, right, and state-based school funding, the economies of scale position doesn't really work as well there, because number one, it's funded by the state, so they don't have to make a profit. But number two, it's also that like you can reduce staff, right? And you can if there was 200 kids going to a school with 6 teachers and 100 kids, you can just have 3 teachers, right? It doesn't like change the finances.
Yeah, but it does. Like, but it does change the quality of the product, right? So if you reduce the number of teachers, right, there comes a point where, like I was saying, it collapses the ability to deliver the education, right? To deliver the product of education. So that kind of like moves. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just because student teacher ratio. That's all.
Yeah,
but for that to occur, public schools would have to be so fucking awful that they like collapse across the entire country. Like it would have to be like. Yes.
No. Well, no. Like we see, within like individual school districts, we see schools that have a massive, a teacher to student ratio, where some teachers are teaching 45 student classes. That's obviously a degrading of their ability to deliver that education, which means that school
Absolutely,
system.
yes.
Okay, sure. Then
That's
within
not
that,
your underfunding.
I mean, it could be, right? I mean, there could be more than one reason. There could be more than one reason why there's not enough teachers
there's a
there.
multitude of factors. I mean, right?
Okay, well, sure. So that moves me into Lactoid, right? And Lactoid was asking us, but really only I exist. Asking,
Also,
like,
You
what?
exist to me,
no
Prime.
school choice program
Yes.
has done what you guys are talking about, right? As much as I fucking hate school choice because I think it's just a way to bring woke ideology into schools, almost every school choice program that is passed currently is only a percentage, right? So like it's usually like 60 or 70% base of like how much that kid would have gotten. And there's still like 30-40% of the taxes by the parents being paid and subsidizing the public school. So it
Well,
already
because private
takes
school is
into effect
cheaper.
the calculations you're talking about.
Because private school is like more cost efficient. That's why they can like
Yeah,
save more
private
money.
schools is better because
Yeah.
public schools suck because they're run by the government.
No.
Yes.
Great education.
I-
Come on, guys.
I cannot deal with that one. That part. Lactwood, you're saying, what are your suggestions other than simply upping the amount of funding? Well, I think what we need to understand is that I think there is a reason that we spend so much more on our children, and it's not because we necessarily care, but more that schools in themselves, in the U.S., I can't speak to other places, are doing more and more, right? That we've collapsed different parts of our society support systems within our communities that used to accomplish or help raise kids.
Well, like
And school systems are taking up the slack. Okay,
what?
so
I mean, I don't know of anything that U.S. schools do that Canadian schools don't do for less money.
Well, no, the reason we spend so much money more and more on our on children, right, is because of what's known in economics as cost disease, right? The value of the labor of the education system has not increased in the same way that it has in domestic manufacturing or in IT and things like that. And so what ends up occurring is that the value of an hour of labor in, let's say, producing TVs or producing widgets or coding has gone exponentially high, but you still need a teacher present in the classroom. And there's a lack of education in schooling, which I would attribute to public education. But nevertheless, that's why we continuously spend more and more,
Sure.
is because of cost.
Okay. So I'm gonna finish my point here. So and Dibby, I'll try to answer your question, right? So we within especially within cities, there is a lack of support for these kids. So if you don't have like extracurricular activities for kids to do, right, like outside of a school, right, you don't have like a public center where your kids can go and play after school, well then kids are going to get into trouble, right? So you need to have more and more extracurricular activities at the school to help kids out. We have parents who are who require a dual income within their household to run that household, and so the schools are picking up the slack in terms of childcare. You have parents who can't afford to pay for the lunch of their children, so.
Breakfast.
Yeah, in the breakfast, indeed, right? And so schools have to pick up that slack as well. There's been all these society has been degraded because of lack of investment, especially in certain areas, for so long. Schools have been trying to pick that up. In terms of dealing, we don't pay for mental health care here, right? And where do kids get that? Like the best place right now is schools where you have one counselor for 1,000 kids. So
where did that investment come from, though?
So I'm sorry. Let me finish where I'm going. So I'm saying that we need to schools are important because they're doing more of what the community can no longer do. And so what I would say is I would invest in all these areas that I'm talking about, right? Like I'd more investment in terms of, well, certainly mental health care, and regular health care, right? Because that's also where kids get that. Either investments and within sort of like community food delivery, or trying to raise wages within those areas so that parents can pay for these things themselves. And finally, what I'll say is that and I'll be done. And then I'll be done, and I want to hear what you all have to say. The moment where in this country where the white-black education gap closed was the smallest was when we did school busing. So when black kids went to white schools, all of a sudden, turns out they can accomplish everything that those white kids could. So even if it's true that within that black school and with that white school, my voice went super high for a second. That black school and that white school, that they're spending the exact same dollar amount, there was some sort of disconnect in how those services are being delivered. Okay, how those services are being delivered, and so there needs to be some sort of change in terms of allocation. I have more ideas on that, but I'll let it go there. So Lactoid, since I was all to him, he can respond. Doobie, you're dying to jump in. I want to hear from you as well. Also, we're in bonus time, guys, so like just be aware.
Bonus round, nice.
So it's an interesting thought, and there's obviously other expenses than just instruction that come with like schooling. The issue is this also just isn't. So the link that I put forward, not only does it specify the total educational expenses per student, but it specifies the expenditures on instruction specifically. And you don't see a massive difference between black and white students there either. 7,169 versus 7,329. Meaning that the amount that's spent on per capita on black and white students is roughly the same for non-instruction expenditures and instruction expenditures, right? So the actual instruction is costing roughly the same, and the instruction expenditures, such as all these support systems and all these extra stuff and all these free meals, all of that's also sort of the same. So we, on a per student basis, we don't actually see like a massive, like the school's taking over a massive part of like poor people's lives. I mean, other than what they normally do. I mean, there's other government programs that, of course, far like disproportionately provide funds towards like disadvantaged communities and whatnot. But for our education spending, it doesn't seem to be like the issue.
Well, actually, right? I'm saying that there's so many barriers to getting that education. There, right?
Right.
Like,
so, but it seems like your criticism then is not like. So what we're saying is the education system is like blows, and I'm getting and hopefully this is a charitable way of putting your point, but what you're saying is, well, the problem is like the rest of society blows so much that the kids don't even have a chance once they come into the school system.
Yeah.
There's a grain of truth to that, I think.
It makes it quite
and
difficult.
If that's and that may be like that likely has something to do with it. And that's why Doobie was saying like the communities that these kids grow up in is like critically important. And this is also like why school choice is it's a benefit of school choice, right? Because it allows students to get into different communities instead of being trapped in poor communities.
Rather than that, like I'd say, like address the problems within those communities. We can do that through investment. No, don't just sure me. No, that's
education policy.
Rather than leaving people behind, which is the whole idea of school choice, is leaving people fucking behind, right? Rather than leaving people behind, actually, let's solve the problem of poverty. Poverty is why things are bad, right? Let's solve the poverty, and then we won't have the problems.
Poverty exists because it's called a non sequitur. Like it doesn't. So engage in a logical fallacy.
So Lactoid, go ahead, and then Doobie, because Doobie is bursting at the seams.
So I'm not okay. So we can have a panel on like poverty, and if all this is like an education like question, like school choice, like is this like a good policy or not? Now I'm not like maybe you could argue that eliminating all poverty would be like a better solution.
Yeah,
and I might not even disagree with that. But like if that's like the when we're having a topic about school choice and like the solution is well we just have to end poverty and then things will be better. It's like well, I guess.
I'm saying that like these things are tied, right? That you can't have a discussion of one about the other, right? Why? If some people actually, no, I mean, there's multiple reasons people want to move from schools, right? Some of them because, right, like Scott, right? They're huffing the anti-CRT nonsense, right? Or Doobie, they want to protect their kids from being trans, right? So there's more than one reason why to move from school to school.
Yeah, it's
but
called being an
part of
informed
it
parent.
is that your school is failing due to poverty, right? That's a big part of it. Well, then we have to address that. That actually has to be part of the conversation. Is like, how do we make it so that these schools and these kids are within an environment where they can learn. Sometimes it's not the schools necessarily failing, but the kids unable to learn within that environment. And that's part of it.
So Prime, okay. Then let's agree. Like let's end all poverty, and in the meantime, we have school choice because then it allows students to not be trapped in that poverty that we're working to get rid of, right?
Let's cure cancer.
No.
Let's end poverty. Let's end any form of discrimination. I'm for these things. I too would like to end racism.
Doobie.
See how well that's going.
Because the question's about school choice, right?
Well, it's about all. Okay, so Doobie, please.
Okay, so Prime, you were laying out this thing about schools needing to basically be substitute parents, right? Because families are losing out on so much of what they've had in the past, like community programs, playgrounds in the public parks, shit like this, parents working 2 jobs, whatever. But I feel like all of this exists in a country like Canada, where they provide all the same services that our schools do, right, for less money. So that
we ain't got no vouchers up here. No Chuck E. Cheese school vouchers up here. So
we don't have them here either.
They're better at allocating, so they could have so they could end up having lower
but hold on,
numbers.
But the point is that it doesn't seem like the schools need to be substitute parents. Is the issue? It's something else, right? Because they have the same. I'm sure Canada has the same issues.
They have more social services than we do.
I think it's because we don't put our education system in the marketplace.
And I don't know about their levels of poverty, but I would guess, and maybe I'm wrong, because I don't pretend to know. I don't pretend to care about Canada, but I don't think that their levels of poverty are as steep as ours.
You are correct.
And the society is uneven. So that's what I'm talking about.
Wait, is that true? Canadian levels of poverty,
I think it depends on the community.
Yeah, and it also depends on how you analyze it in terms of the wealth discrepancy between whatever the rich and the poor. Generally, Canada is more egalitarian than the United States. It's going in the wrong direction.
Does that mean that your rich people are more poor, or that your poor people are more rich, or is it a little both?
Probably both.
Yeah.
A little column A, a little column B.
Right? The Gini coefficient is lower there, even though I think it's a silly metric to care about anyways.
Okay,
yeah.
That's right.
Economics, you would.
I think it's a cultural thing. In terms of how Canadians see other Canadians, apart from certain communities, there is a kind of a bit more of a help you out kind of vibe. And I've never seen that from the United States and their sort of cultural ethos.
There's more of a common history emphasized, right? You would say in Canada?
I would say there can be, but it's definitely the case that in Canada it can be very exclusionary. But when it comes to
that, Lactoid?
Whatever.
It's a trap.
What I think
you don't have
Lactoid.
The reason Canada has this ability to be more about how about the community or whatever is because most of you guys are white, right? So there's some kind of
I don't know. But
no,
maybe.
yeah, you are. Most Canadians white.
White or French. Yeah.
Okay.
If you compare it,
is that a huge difference?
Which can be an argument for either side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Compare just white people. We have better healthcare in America and we have better education in America. Now, you could use that as an argument for the successes of the free market and issues within those communities and why those communities are suffering, or you could be America is racist because that's what we assume when we do any analysis of CRT, which is why we don't want that shit in our schools because it's horrible. But yeah, again, you can call me racist all you want. It just happens to be that I'm more informed about how much racist you are. But you keep talking about lack of investment and things like that. And what I find really interesting is you're not willing to work backwards, Prime, in where that money comes from. That money comes from taxpayers, right? So when you're talking about we need to invest more in certain communities, you're talking about money that has been taken from the community, taken out of the market, that is superior at resource allocation,
Taxes are evil, gang.
giving it to the government, wasting it with fraud, waste, and abuse. And an
That's
institution that
that's
can't-
all.
And an institution, I know that you guys like to try and interrupt me when I'm fucking crushing you because none of you understand econ.
You're just
or have
going
any
off on
principles in
taxes.
morals.
You're going
Right,
off on
but no,
taxes.
You're talking
Taxes
about
are not
taxes.
theft.
He's right, though.
Taxes are not theft.
These are money. This is money taken out of the community that is then
Tax is
being
not
used
theft.
inefficiently. And you're like, we got to make it more efficient. But this is the fucking crux of the Hayekian distribution. It's the fucking economic calculation problem. The government will never be as good.
You
as
have a
individual
religious
dollars
belief
per month.
about taxes, and we can't deal with that,
No,
right?
I
Because it's a
understand
religious
fucking
belief. It's a
economics,
religious
unlike
belief.
you.
You are a religious person when it comes to libertarianism.
Well, then
That is your
argue against
religion.
me.
That is your ideology. We cannot deal with
You
this
have an
on a
argument?
Vic, why don't
You
you
have
just
an
like
argument?
It's not
why
about
don't you just
Why don't
it's
you
not
just
about
argue?
facts. It's not about
Please.
anything like that. It's
Why don't you
a
just make
fucking
an argument
ideology.
against what he
Hey,
said?
crush it. Come on,
Hold on,
with the
Vic,
hand on your head,
Vic,
crush
why
it.
don't you just make an argument against what he said then? Like if it's so
Because he
ridiculous, just make
can't.
an argument.
He does this every
Because
time I
it's a
fucking speak about
pointless.
econ.
I have tried so many
God.
times, but you just
Well,
refuse
your
to engage
arguments are
with anything I
bad.
said
God.
because, again, you have this
Taxes are the
religious
price we
belief
pay for living in a
that no
civilized
matter
society.
what, no matter what, taxes must be evil. So you will take that and you will work backwards, right? You will
Not a
work
religious
backwards from
belief,
that
but you,
conclusion, like a
again,
conspiracy
make the
theorist,
argument.
and say
Make the
taxes are
argument.
evil. Therefore,
Make the
anything
argument.
having to do with taxes must be
Make
bad.
the
And,
argument.
right? We don't have
He
time.
is.
I have to
Make the argument.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
was.
but I would love to have you on
Okay,
sometime
okay.
and make it in a 2-hour, 3-hour
Because
thing
you-
where we actually have a discussion.
Wait,
I,
I'm
I
gonna
would
government
and
takes,
capital
it's not stealing. It's the government.
It's
Yeah, DM me.
Right
We'll have a debate
now-
about economics and taxes.
okay.
It's
All
the
right. So
government's money, they give
we
it to
You had your
will
chance in the polling booth.
we will continue
A lot of
on.
people have accepted debates
Uh,
for me, and then they just never happen.
I accept
Not
anything,
me.
I'm still learning.
No, I
Corey's always stepped up.
okay. Be
Hi, I'm
very
new. I'll
and hey,
accept most
hey,
things.
be very
He doesn't
clear.
back down.
Scott and I talked about having a debate, but we couldn't agree on the terms of debate. So we'll have to debate
I'll
on another
moderate that.
subject. Oh,
I gotta say
I'm
something real quick.
that'd be
unbiased
fine.
moderator
People-
Lactoid.
I have
Hey,
anyone
what?
here
If
to
I could-
moderate anything.
Right? Lawyers
if-
mediate
fine.
cases. I can.
Yeah,
mediate.
yeah. We'll
Not
have
to
to.
be very
We can't debate on
fair.
CRT because we can't agree on the
on
terms
what
of
it
the
actually
debate.
means.
But well, I'll love to debate on anything else.
I need to say-
I want to debate.
I thought RayTube, FYI.
Like, what it,
Yeah, what were the terms of the debate? Like, we need to like
We have to
account
talk
for like
about
historic
only the
oppression.
facts.
White people get less time to talk. and
Oh
black
yeah,
people get more time to talk.
exactly, exactly.
the title. Oh
um,
god, we got to bring Amanda on. She gets. I only get 77% of
Uh,
the time, and she gets
Yeah,
100% of
come
the
on,
time.
come on. I'm a minority
Leave
too.
There you go.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Pause. You said is your mother Jewish or your father Jewish? Because we might have to increase the amount of time that I get if
True.
Because I mean, demographically speaking, that's a pretty successful group. of people.
Oh,
we don't want
boy.
to go down this route.
oh, especially how we do
But
be
we're
here.
okay with going down the right
Jews
Jews
are
are
with
not in
white
the best
people.
class. Okay,
Why
let's just
not?
say.
We get to talk about how white
Okay.
people have privilege. Let's talk about
I
some
halfway-
Jewish privilege while we're
As an
here.
Let's-
Ashkenazi Jew myself, I can say that Jews.
You're
are
not
racist.
Ashkenazi Jew. Ignore him.
I am absolutely Ashkenazi. Don't deny my
right?
race. What the fuck?
Aren't the Jews
No,
like
hold on, I
majority
did
of
a
the
I've been in a
Muslims and
synagogue one
patriarchy?
I have
time.
1.1% Ashkenazi. That's another thing. If you say it's not, you're a fucking race realist or something.
No, no. First of all, those ancestry, genetic ancestry tests are like really flawed.
Crap.
Like, don't
Thank
go
you.
by those percentages.
yeah, it might be more. I feel more Jewish than it says I am. Okay, so it might be.
Take the elevator. You know, some places they have the Sabbath elevator. You should just make sure you take that elevator. You're good.
I will for sure.
Okay.
Does it
All right.
Just give me a
What?
call. Like, give me a call if you need me if you need me to flip your light switches for you. This goy will happily be there for you. All
I
right.
appreciate
Like, I got
If you can convince Israel to let you do like
some of you guys
I
know
mean,
your
if
place.
you
the
happen to
home
make
tour.
if you happen to make a donation to my bank account that like for whatever
didn't
reason,
start it.
wink wink, like fucking means that I
Wasn't
keep
me.
showing
If
up.
if
flip
When
the
we get
light
to
switches,
affiliate,
I got
it'll
you.
give me more.
I'd like the record to state I did not start this. Okay. I'd like
Okay.
the record to state this.
Let
Juby,
the
if you
record
get
show,
Israel,
on
if you
the
convince
record.
Israel to like the right to return whatever tour, then sure, then you can claim you're Jewish, all right? Then
For
you've
the
made it.
Fucked up.
Okay.
Hold on,
Uh,
Israel is a Nazi ethno state. Like no. Fucking
It's a
business.
terrible place, but like they have
Yeah.
a way of
Yeah.
they have a system of figuring this out. Okay. All right. So we will continue on. Open walk on
So is
panel.
Japan weebs.
Yeah. Yeah. We will continue on to our walk-off panel. Right after this, the content does not end, everyone. Okay, we still got more content for you. It's going to end this one, say goodbye to all these great individuals, and then we'll continue on, and you can be involved in our next panel. We'd love to have you, right? All new people. But before then, guys, if you've been enjoying this, if you've just shown up, if you've been a part of all of this, then hit that follow button. That follow button, make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live. It is all the time. Social and chat. For my social media, we got Twitter, where we tweet, Discord, where we have everything, including the open welcome panel. So be a part of that. TikTok, and then YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. That's where you'll find the VODs, right? Of me, again, intellectually dominating Lactoid just now, right? Like it's all there. It'll be there for all of time, as the testament to my greatness. So check that out. So we're gonna give an outro, but also, guys, if you've been enjoying this content, if you like having all these great people here, right? Then please be so kind and sub to the channel. Get emotes, get ad-free viewing, and make this all possible. It's not all possible without you. So sub to the channel, just $5. To keep this channel up and running, right? If you want to see more of these fantastic individuals, I want to deliver more of them for you, but I cannot do that without your help. So please consider subscribing to the channel, gifting bits, or gifting subs. Usually Amazon Prime says Prime. Okay, I'm going to give an outro now. Let's start with our good friend Wick. Wick, thank you for coming through. And handling your aggravation with Scott so well, right? Like, it's a skill that we've all learned over time. So I feel your friend. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And look, Scott, no bad blood, right? I'd love to talk to you in a more private setting. It's just on these chaotic panels, it's hard to actually have a in-depth conversation. But that's part of the fun. Gang, if you like what I have to say, or even if you hate what I have to say, you can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty. It's all one word, right? We do all sorts of things there. We have a variety show there. Tomorrow, I will be with PrimeCayes and Weaponized Discourse, and we will be having a slew of guests all night to cover the election, the midterm.
You mean Universal
If you are
Discourse?
interested, no, Weaponized Discourse.
Oh, sorry. I just
Weaponized
wanted to make
Discourse.
sure.
Great lady. You'll meet her tomorrow if you tune in. She's going to be our data girl. She's going to keep track of things and interrupt us when there's a major announcement made and things like that. But regardless, you can come check us out. It's going to be a revolving door of guests. If you have you want to talk about your experience in voting at the polls, if it was hard, if it was difficult, if you want to talk about your local race and your local House or legislator elections, you definitely come through and talk to us. If you have predictions, come and talk to us. We're going to start the day off by talking to Not So Erudite for a few minutes, right? And then we're going to continue from there. It's going to be a wonderful slew of guests. Everyone here is invited. Anyone in the chat's invited. It's going to be great. So tune into that. Twitch.tv/deathofcertainty. Thursday, I will be interviewing Iona Italia, who is the chief editor of the Aerial magazine. She's a PhD, fluent in 4 languages. She's done a lot of work when it comes to free speech in Britain, and we're going to be pre-interviewing her like earlier in the day, and then I'm going to be airing that interview during my normal time slot. And then Friday, we're going to talk about political violence, and that'll be fun. So that's me. Check me out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go to Fabulous Scott, as we're always happy to have him around. Because great spirited conversation. Thank you, friend, for being here.
Yeah, so I am Scott from Fabian Liberty, Anarcho-Capitalist Duo stream. Come check us out. To all of the conservatives that are out there, all 3 of you on Twitch Politics, you know, if the Koch brothers and the United Nations are working together to push something, stop fucking trusting it. All right, like, it's not a good idea. That's all I'll say about that entire situation. In terms of bad blood, I bleed yellow. The rest of you bleed red. There is always bad blood. It's the blood that is coursing through you until you give up your socialistic tendencies and embrace capitalism, voluntarism, and free markets, as well as the non-aggression principle. But despite all of that, and despite the fact that I do agree with the tweet that you're not a real progressive if you date someone, I will still date and or fuck any of you regardless of your political persuasion. So have a good one and come check us out.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to know that your penis is non-discerning. All right, let's go to our friend
Oh, it's discerning, just not politics.
Corey. Thank you for coming through and putting up a good fight as usual.
Yeah, always super grateful and appreciative to be here and to be invited on with the familiar faces and the new faces. And I'll give just a short closing statement to the last topic, because this is I'm like committed to this position of like to solve the Daniel Snyder issue. Like just ban football. It's a dumb sport. Not only does playing football give you brain damage, I think watching football also gives you brain damage. And so just to protect the entire public, I think we gotta ban football. But yeah, I am Corey Campbell. I'm a PhD candidate in biochemistry. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv Corey Campbell 84. I cover science. I cover news. If there's any question of whether or not I'm jacked, you come watch me work out. I do workout streams. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Literally, it's Corey Campbell. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Doobie. Pleasure to meet you, Razor. And always a pleasure, Sprouticus. Pleasure to meet you, Amanda. And always love you, Prime. And always a pleasure, Lactoid. Super great. And always a pleasure, Scott and Wick.
Hey, all right. Lactoid, expert by language. So when Corey was talking, well, right, it seemed like you were super jazzed. You were all about it. Didn't want to lose any more brain cells to watching any of it. So it's good that you guys are coming together, right? Political alignment. And thank you. And overall, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, football is great. Herschel Walker is fine. Still vote for him.
Brain damage.
Brain damage. That's the brain damage we were talking about.
Coke Industries wants to let all of you know that school choice is a good option, and Coke Industries has your best interest at heart, as we all obviously know. If you like what I had to say, you can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord and Twitch, where we fight the communists ideologically, of course. And my Twitter handle, which is Anti-Com United 2Ms. As to Twitch, if you like what I have to say, come on by and please follow. I am so close to 100, so I would really appreciate that.
Hey guys, please let's go over and help out our friend Anti-Communist
True
United.
Wick
Hey,
will follow
it's
him. True Wick
literally all right. It's right there, guys. It's right there. Click on it. There's 3 of you. Go over there, and help us out. Yeah, please let's follow our friend Lactoid, who is always around, right? Always part of our community and does a great job. We've all enjoyed his content. Give him a follow and be a part of his community too. I'm sure it's great over there. Okay, so hopefully we can get through there. Just a few more, please. All right, let's go to our friend Amanda, our new friend. Amanda, thank you for stopping by, being a part of this. This is a lot of fun. And assuming, right, the ANCAP brain rot hasn't gotten to you, we would love to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much. I definitely love to come in. I apologize if you hear any immediate cat noises from my end. Somebody has just come to hang out with me, but it's been really nice hanging out with you and chatting with you all. Please forgive any of my random outbursts, but also don't forgive them. And if anybody wants me to come back, you know who to bully in the comments for that. Otherwise, this has been fun and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, next we have our friend Sprouticus. Sprouticus, you got quiet there at the end, right? I guess you're tired of dealing with the nonsense. Yeah, I get it. Sprouticus, thanks for coming through.
It wasn't the nonsense. I've got some secondary things going on, so if I got quiet, I apologize. I got some secondary things going on, but yeah, there was I'm gonna maintain my positions pretty strongly on the first topic, and actually the second topic too. But the first topic, when everyone else was talking before we switched topics, I found out that the quote unquote ownership of a NFL team is a 1/32nd ownership of NFL. In reality, that varies depending on NFL team. So the rest of the NFL teams can vote you out of ownership, and that is how that works. So you truly don't own your team. It's a mixed ownership of the NFL between the rest of the owners of the quote unquote teams. So that is how that works with the NFL. But other than that, nope, school choice is good. It allows people to escape failing schools and move to more successful ones. And I'm always for policies that help kids that are in a bad position. It helps them get in a better position. So unless we can come up with a better idea to make these schools that are failing not failing anymore, then school choice has to be it for right now. And so for that reason, I'm all for school choice until presented a better option.
Right. And I think you need only one more, right, Lactoid? So one more person.
One more, yeah.
One more person, guys. One of you. He's amazing. He's great. He's hilarious. Let's support our friend, Anti-Communist United, right? Go sign up for it. Need one more person to follow. I'm already followed. I've been followed for a long time. So let's support our friend here who always supports us. All right, so let's go to Razor. And the link is in chat. Link is in chat. Someone go follow him. Razor, please.
Yep, I am Razor. My channel is, of course, twitch.tv Razor Sharp Gaming 96. I have been streaming this myself for my 2 fans so far. I am currently on the path to affiliate. I'm super close. I want to do this a lot more, be able to just talk politics, have as much fun as possible. Lactoid, I don't agree with a lot of your stuff, but you're fun. You seem really fun to talk to. Scott, you annoy me, but I fucking love you at the same time because you are very entertaining to talk to. Doobie, same to you. Spraticus, you're actually a lot different than I thought. You're actually a lot different than I thought, and I genuinely do like you. You are actually a pretty cool guy. Same with you, Wick. Corey, you're awesome. Amanda, you're awesome. Everyone here, just amazing. Give them all the love in the world, but please spread some of
Those
that to
last
me
two
too.
were obviously a throwaway.
Because they
Don't buy it, Amanda and Wick. He doesn't really love you. Ah, you're awesome. Anyways,
I don't need
Obviously,
his love.
customer service is
I've
fine.
I've
Everybody
spoken to
fakes
him
me
enough.
all the
I've
time.
spoken to him enough. You're new. You're new to me. You're new to me. But yeah, give everyone here love, and maybe while you're giving them love, sprinkle some of that love on me, please. Thank you.
Hey, did you make it, Lactoid?
I made it. I'm at 101. Thank you guys so much. I love
Hey. Thanks everyone for following and supporting our friend Lactoid, who always does the same.
Prime wasn't gonna let us leave until Lactoid's at 100. So I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, we have our friend Doobie, Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie, thanks for doing all the usual things that you do on my panels. We it wouldn't be the same without you, so we're always glad you're here.
I kiss that frog.
Yeah, that's a common problem. I got it. So I'm Doobie. I run the best and biggest debate server on the Discord platform. You can find it at discord.gg/politics or politics.gg in your browser. We've got over 70,000 people debating about everything from abortion to the ethical implications of hamster fleshlights 24/7. It's a great place. You will hear lots of slurs. I got to warn you, but it's still a great place. Okay. In fact, that actually makes it better in a lot of ways. If you're in chat, you're a dumb bitch. I fundamentally disagree with Scott about a lot of things. Okay, you guys know this, but he's a smart motherfucker, right? So everybody in chat saying that he's stupid or that he's like an idiot or whatever, you're just a mouth breathing retard. That's it. If you think you're not, jump on the open panel, prove it, because you look really stupid. Okay, you just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Razor, Amanda, I think you're both great additions this week. I hope we get to hear more from you in the future. I hope you guys talk more in the future. But I know it can be really intimidating. Lots of angry men screaming over each other about random shit. Like, yeah, I get it, right? So yeah, I hope you guys come back and get more conversation. I appreciate it. So lastly, Kobe, someone who's been part of this community for a very long time, I think from the start, needs some help. Right, his kitty is an expensive dental bill. He really loves his kitty. He's had it since like middle school. And if you've got some pocket change, please toss it in his direction. He deserves it. I'm going to post the link to his GoFundMe in chat. Yeah, it'd be really nice if you guys can help him out. Okay.
Absolutely, please. Let's help our friend Kobe, kind, a kind moderator in this community, and been so for a very long time. Yeah. So I was just thinking about the kissing frogs thing. Like yesterday, there was an article out. Apparently, people are capturing Sonoran desert toads and licking them for their psychedelic effects. That's a thing, and like the parks department was like, "Hey, man,
It's been happening for a
Why
long
didn't I
time.
think of that?
I was
Yeah,
about to
it's not
say,
new.
dog, I love how straight edge you are that you're like, I just learned about it.
Licking
No, no,
frogs
no.
has been a thing, or they get them, they squeeze the fucking like DMT shit out of their back, and they like smoke. Or whatever.
I'm saying
But
the
I
but
do have
the
to. I forgot
What?
one thing. It's extremely important. I got to point this out. So I thought it was really a little bit anti-Semitic, right? When I said that I'm Jewish, you guys all freaked the fuck out, right? But if I were said I were like a woman or a fucking donkey or a goat
We
or something, you
accept
guys
your
would be all for it. But the
True.
moment that I identify as a Jewish person or a black person, Prime, you have a fucking like bitch fit. Okay, accept my identity, Prime. I'm a Jewish black man. It is what it is.
Oh, actually, I think this is
that's a good debate. Transracialism is a good debate. Don't worry.
that's
We'll
we
talk
could
about it
actually have
later.
that discussion in the open panel.
I would
Honestly,
also like
I
to
think that's actually
announce
pretty
at this
interesting.
moment that as an anarcho-capitalist that is also a duo streamer, excuse me, my new pronouns are they, them, landlords.
Oh boy.
You need to refer to me as a landlord.
Another big
don't refer to me
announcement
as
from
a
Scott.
landlord. I will be
that's not a good thing
reporting
to
you
me.
for misgendering, and you can expect that that report
And-
immediately.
I'll call you landlord, but it's gonna be with
I would
vitriol.
like to be lamp if we're
And
going
You
off
can
of
say
the-
with vitriol, right?
And you
just
guys-
as long as you know that I'm laughing all the way to the bank.
You guys were making fun of me. The reason why I brought up the toad is because there was an article because they put a bulletin out saying, "Hey, knock it off," by like the Parks Department. That's why the article is there. That's why I brought it up. So fuck you. And yeah, Mad and
Sounds
Razor.
like a park with the happiest homeless people in it in America.
Amanda and Razor, thank you so
Fucking
much.
licking
Okay.
toads, man.
We
Having a
are.
great time.
Oh my god, you guys are terrible. All right, so look, we are going to continue on to our welcome panel. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. I know they appreciate you so much. I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Pleasure.
Goodbye.